Your incompetence just cost my daughter her future. The words sliced through the Velvet Crown Hotel's marble lobby like a blade. Evan Hart stood 6'2" in his tailored charcoal suit, his jaw locked tight as three waiters scrambled backward from his fury. This wasn't just another billionaire tantrum. This was a man unraveling at the seams, and everyone in that room could feel it. Somewhere behind the kitchen doors, a shy woman named Nora Vale heard him speak in a language that hadn't crossed her ears in 15 years, a language that changed everything. Stay with me until the end of this story. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this tale travels. The crystal chandelier above the Velvet Crown's main dining hall cast fractured light across white tablecloths, each one pressed into submission by staff who knew that perfection here wasn't optional. It was survival. Nora Vale moved between tables like a ghost, her movements practiced and small. At 30 years old, she'd perfected the art of being invisible. Her dark hair was pulled back so tight it gave her headaches, but manager Castellan insisted. Neat and unremarkable, he'd said during her first week. That's what high-end clientele expect from service staff. She'd needed the job too badly to argue. The lunch shift was winding down when the lobby doors opened. Nora didn't see who entered. She was refilling water glasses at table 12, but she heard the change in atmosphere. Conversations didn't stop exactly, but they shifted. Voices dropped. Silverware clinked more carefully. "Is that—" one of the businessmen at table 12 started. "Evan Hart," his companion confirmed quietly. "He never comes here personally." Nora's hand trembled slightly, sending ripples across the water pitcher. She'd seen his face in the business section of newspapers left behind by guests. Hart Industries. Real estate empire. Recently widowed, if the gossip columns were accurate. A daughter, maybe 5 or 6 years old. She didn't look up. Looking up meant making eye contact, and making eye contact with men like that meant being seen. Being seen meant trouble. "You!" The voice came from the lobby, deep and raw with anger. "You brought me the wrong documents." Nora risked a glance. Evan Hart stood near the host station, his dark hair slightly disheveled, his expensive suit jacket open. A leather briefcase lay at his feet, papers scattered around it, and in front of him, trembling, stood Marcus, one of the newer waiters. "Sir, I only brought what the concierge gave me." "Don't!" Evan's voice dropped to something more dangerous than shouting. "Don't insult me with excuses. I specified the Meridian contracts. These are last quarter's reports. My daughter's trust fund revision needs those contracts signed by 5 p.m. today, and you've wasted 40 minutes of my time." Manager Castellan appeared from nowhere, his practiced smile already in place. "Mr. Hart, I'm certain this is simply a miscommunication. Marcus, go retrieve the correct documents immediately. Sir, please, allow me to seat you in our private dining room while we—" "Fire him!" The lobby went completely silent. Marcus's face drained of color. "Please, Mr. Hart, I have student loans. I need this job. You should have thought about that before you demonstrated you can't follow simple instructions." Evan's gray eyes were flat, emotionless. "Fire him, or I make one phone call and your hotel loses its 5-star rating. Your choice." Castellan didn't hesitate. "Marcus, collect your things." Nora watched Marcus stumble toward the staff entrance, his shoulders shaking. She'd lent him $20 last week so he could buy groceries. He'd promised to pay her back on Friday. 2 more waiters approached the lobby. Daniel and Sophie, both carrying what looked like the correct document folders this time. Daniel got 3 steps before Evan turned on him. "Where were you 15 minutes ago when I called for these?" "Sir, the kitchen was backed up, and we were told—" "I don't care what you were told. I care about results." Evan took the folders, flipped through them in seconds, then held up a page with a coffee stain along the edge. "This is how you present documents worth $40 million? With coffee stains?" Sophie stepped forward. "Mr. Hart, that must have happened in transit. We can print fresh copies in just— how long? 10 minutes? Maybe 15— Oh, I have 20 minutes before I need to be across town for a board meeting. My daughter's financial security depends on contracts that should have been pristine and ready an hour ago." He dropped the folders. Papers fluttered across the marble floor. "You're both fired. Get out." "Sir, please," Daniel started. "Out!" The word echoed through the lobby. Sophie grabbed Daniel's arm and pulled him away before he could say anything else. Nora saw tears on Sophie's face. Sophie had 3 kids at home. Her ex-husband never paid child support. Castellan was practically vibrating with panic now. Mr. Hart, I sincerely apologize for this unacceptable service. Please allow me to personally oversee. I don't want apologies. I want competence. Evan ran a hand through his hair, and for just a second, Nora saw past the anger. He looked exhausted, desperate even. Just get me the contracts, clean copies, and someone who won't waste any more of my time. He turned and walked toward the private dining room, his footsteps sharp against the floor. Castellan rounded on the remaining staff. Someone fix this, now, and clean up these papers before other guests arrive. Nora set down her water pitcher and knelt to gather the scattered documents. Her hands moved automatically, stacking pages in order, smoothing corners. She'd always been good at organizing chaos. It was one of the few things she was good at. What are you doing? Castellan hissed. Those aren't your responsibility. Someone needs to do it, Nora said quietly. Fine. Then take them to printing, get clean copies, and deliver them to Mr. Hart. And for the love of everything, don't screw this up, or you'll be joining the others on the unemployment line. Nora's stomach twisted. She nodded and hurried toward the business center with the documents clutched against her chest. The business center was empty except for the humming printer. Nora organized the papers, identified which ones were stained, and started fresh copies. While she waited, she actually read what she was printing. Contract amendments, trust fund revisions, estate transfers, all designed to protect someone named Lily Hart in case of her father's death or incapacitation. She was setting up her daughter's future because he couldn't guarantee he'd be there to do it himself. Nora's throat tightened. She knew what that felt like. Her own father had died when she was 17, leaving behind nothing but debt and unfinished promises. The printer finished. She checked every page twice, made sure nothing was smudged or bent, then slid everything into a clean leather portfolio from the supply cabinet. When she reached the private dining room, she paused outside the door. Through the frosted glass panel, she could see Evan Hart pacing, phone pressed to his ear. I don't care what the board thinks about the timeline, Richard. Lily comes first. If they want to push back the vote, fine. But I'm not signing anything that leaves her vulnerable. A pause. No, I won't calm down. You didn't see her face this morning when I told her I had to miss her recital tonight because of this meeting. His voice cracked on the last word. Nora knocked softly. Come in, he called, voice hardening again. She opened the door and stepped inside. The private dining room was smaller than the main hall, but twice as elegant. Dark wood panels, leather chairs, a table that could seat 12, but currently held only Evan's open laptop and scattered notes. You have the contracts? He asked without looking up from his phone. Yes, sir. Nora approached carefully, set the portfolio on the table. All clean copies. I checked them twice. Fine, leave them. She should have left, should have backed out quietly and returned to her section. But something stopped her. Maybe it was the exhaustion in his voice. Maybe it was the photo she'd glimpsed on his laptop screen of a little girl with dark curls holding up a finger painting. Or maybe it was the words he muttered as he ended his call. Semisem samit ha elvisitem utis. Hungarian, a dialect from the northern regions near the border. Nothing matters if I lose her too. Nora's breath caught. She hadn't heard that dialect in 15 years, not since her grandmother died. Evan finally looked up at her. I said you can go. You're from Sarospatak, Nora said quietly. In Hungarian. His expression shifted, surprise, then something harder, suspicious. How do you know that dialect? My grandmother was from Tokai, 20 kilometers away. She kept her voice soft. She raised me until I was 15. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The anger that had been rolling off him in waves seemed to pause, replaced by something more complicated. You shouldn't eavesdrop, he said finally. In English. I wasn't trying to. The words just found me. She gestured toward the portfolio. Your contracts are ready. I hope they help keep your daughter safe. She turned to leave. Wait. Nora stopped but didn't turn around. What's your name? He asked. Nora Vale, sir. How long have you worked here, Nora? 2 years. Almost 3. She heard him move, footsteps approaching. And in 3 years, have you ever seen me act like I did today? This is the first time I've seen you at all, sir. Then you're luckier than most of my employees. He exhaled. I'm not usually... I don't usually fire people for minor mistakes. Nora turned slightly. He was closer than she expected, standing just a few feet away. Up close, she could see the shadows under his eyes, the tension in his jaw. He looked like a man who hadn't slept properly in days. "You're scared," she said, then immediately regretted it. You didn't tell billionaires what they were feeling, but Evan didn't explode. He just studied her for a long moment. "My daughter has a recital tonight. I promised I'd be there. But if I don't get these contracts finalized and signed before the board meeting, there are people who will use it as leverage to force me out of my own company. And if that happens, the vultures will descend on everything I've built for Lily." "So you're hurting other people to protect her?" "I'm doing what's necessary." "Marcus has student loans," Nora said quietly. "Sophie has 3 children. Daniel is supporting his sick mother. You didn't just take their jobs, you took their ability to survive." Evan's expression hardened again. "That's not my responsibility." "No, but it's your choice." She shouldn't have said it. She knew she shouldn't have. But the words had been building since she watched Marcus stumble away in tears, and now they were out. "You think I'm the villain in this scenario?" Evan asked, his voice dangerously soft. "I think you're terrified and taking it out on people who can't fight back." "And what would you do?" He stepped closer. "If you had a daughter depending on you and enemies circling and impossible choices every single day, what would you do differently?" Nora met his eyes. "I'd remember that cruelty doesn't make you strong. It just makes you cruel." The silence stretched between them like a wire pulled taut. Then Evan laughed. It was a short, bitter sound. "You have no idea what you're talking about." "You're right. I don't." Nora moved toward the door. "I've never had the luxury of being cruel. I've spent my whole life on the other side of it." "Nora," she paused, "are you always this honest with people who could destroy your career?" "Only when they remind me of someone I used to know." "Who?" "Myself," she said softly. "Before I learned that survival sometimes means swallowing your dignity. I hope you never have to learn that lesson, Mr. Hart, for your daughter's sake." She left before he could respond. Her hands were shaking when she returned to the main dining hall. Castellan intercepted her immediately. "What did you do? He wants to see you again." "I delivered the contracts. He specifically asked for you to serve his table. Why would he—" Castellan's eyes narrowed. "What did you say to him?" "Nothing important. If you've caused problems—" "I'll handle it," Nora said. She didn't know how she'd handle it, but she couldn't afford to lose this job. Not with her mother's medical bills piling up, not with rent due in a week. When she returned to the private dining room, Evan was seated at the table. He'd ordered, apparently, a full spread of the chef's special menu sat in front of him, untouched. "You called for me, sir?" Nora kept her voice professional. "Sit down." "I'm working. I can't—" "I'm a guest requesting service. Sit down." Nora perched on the edge of the chair across from him, her spine rigid. Evan pushed a plate toward her. "Eat something." "I'm not hungry." "Your staff." "When's the last time you had a real meal?" She didn't answer. "Thought so." Cut into his steak, took a bite, then set down his fork. "This is excellent food, perfectly prepared, and I can't taste any of it." Nora stayed silent. "My daughter's name is Lily," he continued. "She's 6 years old. Her favorite color is purple. She wants to be a veterinarian when she grows up, and she thinks I hung the moon." His voice dropped. "Her mother died 2 years ago, cancer, and every day since then I've been terrified that I'm going to fail her the way I failed my wife." "I'm sorry for your loss," Nora said quietly. "Are you, or are you just saying what people say?" "Both, probably. I don't know you well enough to lie with conviction." Another bitter smile crossed his face. "At least you're honest." He picked up his wine glass, swirled it without drinking. "My wife used to tell me I was too hard on people. She said I treated business like war and forgot about the casualties." Was she right? Probably. He finally drank. "After she died, I thought if I just worked hard enough, controlled enough variables, built enough safeguards, I could protect Lily from everything, but the harder I try, the more I realize I'm teaching her the wrong lessons." "What lessons?" "That power means you don't have to care about collateral damage." Nora pulled the plate of food closer, took a small bite. It was good. Probably the best steak she'd ever tasted. But Evan was right. When you were drowning in fear, food didn't have flavor. "My father died when I was 17, she said. Left my mother and me with nothing but debt collectors and broken promises. For years, I was angry at him for being weak, for not planning better, for leaving us vulnerable. She set down her fork. Then I grew up and realized he was just scared, like you. He made bad choices because he was terrified of making worse ones. Did you forgive him? Eventually, but it took time. How much time? I'll let you know when I'm finished. Evan's expression softened slightly. Your grandmother from Tokai, is she still alive? No, she died when I was 15. Cancer, like your wife. I'm sorry. So am I. Nora met his eyes. She used to tell me a proverb, Nemazabator, akinem fel, hanem akia felelem elenera is lep. Do you know it? Courage isn't the absence of fear, but action despite it, Evan translated. She also used to make the most incredible stew. Simple ingredients, potatoes, paprika, whatever vegetables we had. But she'd cook it for hours until everything melted together. Nora smiled at the memory. Whenever I was scared or sad, she'd put a bowl in front of me and say, "Eat. Fear is easier to face on a full stomach." Evan was quiet for a moment. Then he stood, walked to the phone on the wall, and dialed the kitchen. This is Evan Hart in the private dining room. I need a favor. Nora listened as he spoke to someone, the head chef presumably, describing a simple Hungarian stew, asking if they had the ingredients to make it. When he hung up, he turned to her. They'll have it ready in 40 minutes. You don't have to... I know, but I want to. He returned to his seat. Tell me about her, your grandmother. So Nora did. She talked about the small house in the village, about learning to cook on a wood stove, about summers spent picking vegetables in the garden. She talked about Hungarian lullabies and old folk tales and the way her grandmother's hands had always smelled like paprika and bread dough. And Evan listened. Really listened. Not the distracted attention of someone waiting for their turn to speak, but genuine focus. She sounds remarkable, he said when Nora finally ran out of words. She was. She also would have told you to stop being an ass to people who are just trying to do their jobs. Evan laughed, a real laugh this time, not bitter. Probably. My grandmother was the same way. Didn't tolerate nonsense from anyone, including me. He sobered. I was wrong to fire those people. I know I was wrong even as I was doing it, but I couldn't stop myself. The anger just consumed everything. You could rehire them. I will, if they'll come back. He looked at her. Thank you for calling me out on my bullshit. Most people are too afraid. I'm terrified of you, Nora admitted, but I'm more terrified of becoming someone who stays silent when they shouldn't. The chef himself brought the stew 40 minutes later, apologizing that it wasn't quite authentic. Evan waved off the apology and told him it smelled perfect. They ate in comfortable silence. The stew was good, not exactly like Nora's grandmother's recipe, but close enough to bring tears to her eyes. This is what I needed, Evan said quietly. Not the fancy menu, not the business meetings, just this. Sometimes simple is better, Nora agreed. He checked his watch. I have 15 minutes before I need to leave for the board meeting. After that, I'm taking Lily to her recital, no matter what happens with the contracts. Good. The board might use it against me. Show up at her school, make a scene, force my hand. Then let them show up, Nora said. Let them watch a man choose his daughter over business. Let them see what kind of father she has. Maybe it'll remind them they're human too. Evan studied her for a long moment. You're either very wise or very naive. Can't I be both? Probably. He finished his stew, then pulled out his phone. Made a call. Richard, I need you to contact 3 former employees. Yes, the ones from today. Offer them their jobs back with a formal apology and a month's severance as compensation for my behavior. A pause. I don't care what it looks like. Just do it. When he hung up, Nora felt something loosen in her chest. Thank you. Don't thank me. I'm still the man who fired them in the first place. He gathered his contracts. But maybe I can be better, for Lily. Nora stood as he prepared to leave. Your daughter is lucky to have you. I don't know about that, but I'm trying. He paused at the door. Nora? Yes? If you ever need anything, a reference, help with something, whatever, call my office. I mean it. I will. Thank you, Mr. Hart. Evan, after sharing stew and childhood stories, I think we're past formalities. He left. Nora stood alone in the private dining room, staring at the empty bowls, trying to process what had just happened. The door burst open. Castellan stormed in. What did you do? He demanded. Hart's assistant just called and reinstated those fired employees. He also requested that you be assigned to his table whenever he dines here. Do you have any idea what kind of position this puts me in? I didn't do anything, Nora said truthfully. I just talked to him. About what? Family, food, fear. Castellan's expression suggested she'd lost her mind. You talked to Evan Hart about feelings? He started it. I don't care who started it. Your staff. He's a billionaire. You don't fraternize with... Stopped. Took a breath. Fine. Whatever you did, it worked. He's pleased, which means I'm pleased. But don't let it go to your head. You're still just a waitress. I know what I am, Nora said quietly. Castellan left. Nora began clearing the table, moving mechanically through the familiar task. She'd expected the encounter with Evan Hart to be terrifying, and it had been, at first. But somewhere between the anger and the stew, something had shifted. She'd seen past the fury to the fear underneath. And maybe, just maybe, he'd seen past her invisibility to the person hiding there. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Made it to the board meeting, contract signed, Lily's future secured. Thank you for the reminder about what matters. EH. Nora saved the number but didn't respond. What would she even say? She'd done what any decent person would do, shown a little compassion to someone who needed it. But as she finished her shift and caught the bus home to her tiny apartment, she couldn't shake the feeling that today had changed something. She just didn't know what yet. In the weeks that followed, Evan Hart didn't return to the Velvet Crown. Nora told herself it was better that way. Whatever brief connection they'd shared, it existed in its own moment. Trying to extend it would only lead to disappointment. Then one evening, as she was wiping down tables after the dinner rush, Castellan appeared. There's a situation, he said, his face pale. Private dining room, now. Nora's stomach dropped. What kind of situation? The kind where you keep your mouth shut and do exactly what you're told. She followed him to the private dining room. Inside, Evan Hart sat at the table again. But this time, he wasn't alone. A man in an expensive gray suit sat across from him. Late 50s, silver hair, cold eyes. Between them, contract documents covered the entire table. Ah, refreshments, the silver-haired man said when Nora entered. Bring us coffee, black for me, and... He glanced at Evan. What are you drinking these days, Hart? Whiskey? Regret? Water's fine, Evan said tightly. Nora moved to the beverage station in the corner, preparing drinks while trying to look invisible. But she was listening, always listening. You're making this harder than it needs to be, the silver-haired man continued. The merger is beneficial for both parties. Hart Industries joins Pierce Holdings, you maintain a controlling interest, and we both profit. Simple. Nothing about you is simple, Roland, Evan replied. Roland Pierce. Nora recognized the name. Pierce Holdings had been in the news recently. Aggressive acquisitions, hostile takeovers, businesses stripped and sold for parts. Come now, we're old friends, Roland said smoothly. Your father and I built this industry together. He'd want you to consider this offer seriously. My father would tell you to go to hell. Your father is dead, and unless you sign this merger agreement before tomorrow's board vote, Hart Industries will be too. Roland leaned forward. You're underwater, Evan. The expansion into European markets failed. Your stock price is plummeting. Your board is losing faith. This merger saves you. This merger guts everything my family built. It preserves your daughter's inheritance. Isn't that what matters? Nora set the coffee and water on the table, hands steady despite her racing heart. Thank you, Evan said quietly. To her, not Roland. She should have left, should have walked away. But something about Roland Pierce made her skin crawl. The way he smiled didn't reach his eyes. The way he spoke about Evan's dead father, like they were discussing stock prices. She retreated to the corner, pretending to organize supplies while staying within earshot. Look at the numbers, Roland said, sliding documents across the table. Page 4, your quarterly losses. Page 7, your outstanding debts. Page 12, the clause that protects Lily's trust fund even if the company fails. Evan read in silence, his jaw tightened with each page. You have until midnight tonight to sign, Roland continued. The board votes at 9 a.m. tomorrow. If you show up without this merger secured, they'll oust you and sell to me anyway. At least this way you maintain some control. Some control, Evan repeated, meaning you make the decisions and I smile for the cameras. Meaning you keep your legacy alive instead of watching me tear it apart piece by piece. Nora's hands tightened on the water pitcher she was holding. This wasn't a business negotiation. This was a threat. Evan stood abruptly. I need to think about this. You have 7 hours, Roland checked his watch. I'll wait here. Take your time. Walk around, clear your head. But remember, Lily's future depends on the choice you make tonight. Evan left without another word. Roland pulled out his phone, typed something, then glanced toward Nora. You, more coffee. She approached carefully, refilled his cup. Tell me something, Roland said, not looking up from his phone. How long have you worked here? 3 years, sir. And in 3 years, have you learned to mind your own business? Nora's blood went cold. I'm just serving coffee, sir. Good. Keep it that way. He sipped his coffee, made a face. This is terrible. Tell the chef I want something better. Yes, sir. She left quickly, but instead of going to the kitchen, she slipped into the hallway. Through the frosted glass, she could still see Roland. He was on his phone now, voice too low to hear clearly, but she caught fragments. Cornered him perfectly. Signs tonight, or we force the vote. Either way, Hart Industries is ours by Monday. Nora's breath caught. This wasn't a legitimate merger. This was a trap. She needed to warn Evan. But how? She was just a waitress. He was a billionaire surrounded by lawyers and advisors. What could she possibly... Her phone buzzed. The number Evan had texted from weeks ago. Can you bring me something to eat? I'm in the hotel library. Need to think. Psh. Nora's hands shook as she typed a response. On my way. She grabbed a sandwich from the kitchen, claimed she was delivering it to a guest, and hurried to the library. The hotel library was small, more of a reading room, really. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, leather chairs, a fireplace that was never lit. Evan sat in the corner, contract documents spread across his lap. Thank you, he said when she handed him the sandwich. Then he actually looked at her. What's wrong? You look terrified. I need to tell you something, Nora said quietly, and you're probably going to think I'm crazy or overstepping or... Nora, just tell me. She took a breath. Roland Pierce. After you left, he made a phone call. I heard him say this isn't a real merger. It's a trap. He's planning to take Hart Industries whether you sign or not. The contract has something hidden in it. Evan's expression didn't change. You're sure about what you heard? Yes. He said, Hart Industries is ours by Monday, no matter what you choose. Did he see you listening? I don't think so, but he warned me to mind my own business. Evan set down his sandwich, stood, began pacing. This doesn't make sense. I've had my lawyers review this contract for weeks. They found nothing suspicious. Maybe it's not in the legal language. Maybe it's in the execution. Nora thought fast. What happens after you sign? Who handles the filing? Who has access to the documents? Roland's team handles the regulatory filings, standard practice for the acquiring company. Evan stopped. Unless he changes the terms after I sign but before filing. Can he do that? If he has the right people in the right positions? Yes. Evan's face hardened. That son of a bitch. My father warned me about him years ago. Said Roland played the long game, waited until you were vulnerable, then struck. So what do? I call my lawyers, have them dig deeper into... He checked his watch. I have 6.5 hours. Even if they find something, there's not enough time to... The library door opened. Roland Pierce stepped inside, followed by 2 large men in suits. Having a private meeting? Roland asked pleasantly. How intimate? Though I have to say, Evan, your taste in companions has declined significantly since your wife died. Get out, Roland. I don't think so. You see, I came here to have a friendly conversation, but then I noticed our waitress friend acting rather suspicious. He turned to Nora. Eavesdropping is rude and dangerous. Nora's heart hammered. I was just bringing food. Of course you were. Roland's smile was ice. My colleagues here are going to escort you back to the kitchen, where you'll stay for the rest of the evening, quietly. The two men moved toward her. Don't touch her, Evan said, his voice sharp. She's staff. I can request she be removed from our service. Roland's expression didn't change. Unless you'd like to cause a scene and alert hotel management about your friend's spying. I'm sure they'd be interested to know their waitress was listening to confidential business discussions. Nora looked at Evan. His hands were clenched into fists, jaw tight. But he was calculating. She could see it, weighing options, considering angles. It's fine, Nora said quietly. I'll go back to the kitchen. Smart girl, Roland said. But as the men reached for her arms, Nora did something she'd never done before. She grabbed the nearest object, a heavy glass paperweight from the side table, and threw it directly at the library window. Glass shattered. The hotel alarm screamed to life. Oops, Nora said. Chaos erupted. Security descended on the library within 90 seconds. Hotel management wasn't far behind. Roland's men had stepped back from Nora the moment the alarm triggered, their hands raised in a show of innocence that made her want to break another window. Castellan arrived looking like he might have a stroke. What happened here? I'm terribly sorry, Nora said, forcing her voice to shake. I was bringing Mr. Hart his food and I tripped. The paperweight just flew out of my hands. It was the worst lie she'd ever told. Everyone in the room knew it was a lie. But the alarm was still screaming, and hotel policy required evacuation protocols for broken windows in case of security threats. Everyone needs to exit to the main lobby, the security chief announced. Now, Roland's cold eyes fixed on Nora. How clumsy of you. I'm so sorry, sir. I'll pay for the damages. I'm sure you will. He turned to Evan. We'll continue our discussion in the private dining room, away from flying objects. The security team ushered them all toward the lobby. In the confusion, Evan managed to walk beside Nora. That was either brilliant or suicidal, he murmured. Both, probably. He's not going to let this go. I know. They reached the lobby. Castellan grabbed Nora's arm hard enough to bruise. My office, now. But before he could drag her away, Evan's voice cut through the noise. Actually, I requested Ms. Vale's presence in the dining room for the remainder of my business meeting. Castellan's grip loosened. Sir, she just destroyed hotel property. An accident. I'll cover the damages. Evan's tone left no room for argument. She stays with me. Roland had already disappeared into the private dining room with his men. Castellan looked between Evan and Nora, his face mottled with anger and confusion. Fine, he spat, but she's your responsibility. And when this blows up in your face, don't say I didn't warn you. He stalked off. Nora's arm throbbed where he'd grabbed her. Thank you, she said quietly. Don't thank me yet. You just made yourself a target. Evan's expression was grim. Roland doesn't forgive people who get in his way. What are you going to do? I don't know, but I need time to think, and you bought me some by triggering that alarm. He glanced toward the dining room. I should go back before he gets suspicious. He already knows I overheard him. Then we're both in trouble. Evan ran a hand through his hair. Stay close. And if things go bad, really bad, run. Don't try to be a hero. He left before she could respond. Nora returned to the main dining hall, but her hands shook as she refilled water glasses and took orders. Every few minutes, she glanced toward the private dining room. Through the frosted glass, she could see silhouettes, Evan and Roland facing each other across the table, the two guards standing by the door like statues. An hour passed, then another. The dinner rush slowed to a trickle. Nora's section emptied out. She wiped down tables that were already clean, reorganized salt shakers, did anything to stay busy and avoid thinking about what might be happening behind that closed door. At 10:30, the dining room door opened. One of Roland's guards stepped out, scanned the hall, then approached her. You. Come with me. Nora's stomach dropped. I'm working. Now. She followed him to the private dining room. Inside, Evan sat rigid in his chair, jaw clenched. Roland was pouring himself another scotch, looking pleased with himself. The contract documents were stacked neatly in front of Evan, a pen lying across the top page. Ah, our clumsy friend returns, Roland said. Pour us some wine, would you? We're celebrating. Nora moved to the wine service, hands steady through sheer force of will. What are we celebrating? Evan has agreed to sign the merger. Haven't you, Evan? Evan's eyes met hers. There was something there, a warning, maybe, or an apology. The terms are acceptable, he said flatly. Nora poured wine into crystal glasses, mind racing. He couldn't sign this, not after what she'd heard Roland say, but what could she do? She was just... Actually, Roland said, I think our waitress should witness the signing, as someone neutral. You don't mind, do you, Evan? Do whatever you want, Roland. Excellent. Roland gestured to Nora. Come here, stand beside Mr. Hart so you can see him sign. Nora approached slowly. Evan's hand hovered over the pen. She could see the tension in his shoulders, the muscle jumping in his jaw. This was wrong. Everything about this was wrong. Before you sign, Nora said, surprising herself. Can I ask a question? Roland's smile thinned. What question could you possibly have about business contracts? Just curious. After Mr. Hart signs, what happens next? How does the merger get finalized? That's not your concern. Humor her, Evan said. I'm curious too. Roland's expression suggested he thought they were both idiots, but he answered. The documents get filed with the SEC within 24 hours. Standard regulatory procedure. My legal team handles it to ensure compliance. And Mr. Hart gets copies of everything that's filed, Nora pressed. Of course. Certified copies with timestamps and verification codes? Now Roland was looking at her like she'd grown a second head. Why would a waitress know about SEC filing procedures? My ex-boyfriend was a paralegal. He used to complain about the paperwork. It wasn't true, but it sounded plausible. He said some companies would file amended versions without telling the other party. Change terms after signing. The room went very quiet. Are you accusing me of fraud? Roland asked softly. No, sir, just making conversation. Then I suggest you stop talking and let the adults finish their business. But Evan had set down the pen. Actually, she raises a good point. I want certified copies with verification codes delivered to my lawyers before the board meeting tomorrow. That's not necessary. Then it won't be a problem to provide them. Evan leaned back in his chair. Unless there's something in the filed version that won't match what I'm signing tonight, Roland's pleasant mask cracked slightly. You're being paranoid. I'm being cautious. There's a difference. Evan tapped the contract. You want my signature? Fine. But I want ironclad guarantees that what I'm signing is exactly what gets filed. No amendments, no alterations. Every comma identical. You don't trust me. Would you trust you? The two men stared at each other. Nora barely breathed. Finally, Roland laughed. You've gotten smarter since your father died. Fine. Certified copies to your lawyers by 8 a.m. Satisfied? Not even slightly, but it's a start. Evan picked up the pen. Nora's mind raced. Even with certified copies, there had to be something else, some other trap. Roland was too confident, too relaxed. He'd already won somehow, and they were all just playing out the script he'd written. Think, she told herself. What did Roland say on the phone? Hart Industries is ours by Monday. Monday was 3 days away. The board vote was tomorrow. So even if Evan didn't sign tonight, wait, Nora said. When's the board vote exactly? What time? 9 a.m., Evan said. Why? And if you don't show up with this merger signed, what happens? The board votes without me. They'll approve Pierce Holdings' hostile takeover bid, which was filed when? Evan frowned. Last week. Wednesday, I think. So they already have a backup plan, Nora said slowly. If you don't sign tonight, they take the company by force tomorrow. If you do sign, they take it through the merger. Either way, you lose. She's smarter than she looks, Roland observed, which is unfortunate for her. One of his guards shifted position. Nora noticed he'd moved closer to the door, blocking the exit. But here's what she's missing, Roland continued. If Evan doesn't sign tonight, the hostile takeover will drag through courts for months. Legal fees, stock volatility, public scrutiny. His daughter's trust fund will be frozen during litigation. She'll have nothing. He turned to Evan. This way is clean. Quick. Lily gets her inheritance, you maintain a seat on the board, and everyone walks away with something. Except my company, Evan said. Your father's company. You just inherited it. I built this industry alongside him. Roland's voice hardened. He promised me a stake, a real stake, not the scraps he left me in his will. This merger corrects that injustice. So this is revenge. This is justice. Now sign or watch everything burn tomorrow. Evan's hand tightened on the pen. Nora could see him calculating, weighing options that all led to losing. She wanted to help, wanted to find some brilliant solution, but she was just a waitress who'd stumbled into something way beyond her understanding. The pen touched paper. Actually, Nora heard herself say, there's one thing I don't understand. Roland's patience was clearly wearing thin. What now? If the hostile takeover is already filed and ready to go, why do you need him to sign this merger at all? Why not just let the board vote tomorrow and take the company that way? Silence fell over the room. Because this way is cleaner, Roland said. I already explained. No, I get that part. But hostile takeovers are public, right? They get reported, investigated. The SEC looks at them carefully. Nora was making half of this up based on legal dramas she'd watched, but she kept going. A merger, though, especially one where the CEO agrees willingly, that doesn't get the same scrutiny. That looks like a business decision, not a hostile action. Evan set down the pen again. She's right. A hostile takeover would trigger investigations. Questions about how you acquired enough board support so quickly. Potential insider trading violations if anyone finds out you've been buying up shares through shell companies. I haven't, please, my father taught me every trick in the book before he died, including the ones you taught him. Evan stood. This isn't about justice or inheritance. This is about covering your ass while you steal my company. Roland's pleasant facade finally shattered. Sit down and sign the contract, or I'll make sure your daughter's trust fund is tied up in litigation until she's 30. You can't do that. I have 3 of your board members in my pocket. I have evidence, manufactured evidence, but evidence nonetheless, that you've been embezzling company funds. One phone call, and the SEC freezes everything. He pulled out his phone. Want to test me? Nora's pulse hammered. This had escalated beyond business negotiations. This was blackmail, extortion, and she'd pushed it there by asking the wrong questions. Evan looked at her. For a second, she saw something in his expression. Not anger, surprisingly. Almost like gratitude. Like he was glad someone finally saw through Roland's act, even if it made everything worse. You should go, he told her quietly. This doesn't concern you anymore. No, she stays, Roland said. She's a witness now, and I want to make sure we're all on the same page about what happens next. He gestured to his guards. Lock the door. Nobody leaves until this is signed. One guard moved to the door, turned the lock with a decisive click. Nora's mouth went dry. You can't hold us here. This is kidnapping. This is a private business meeting. Your staff assigned to serve us. The door is locked for privacy. Roland's smile returned. Nothing illegal about that. The hotel will notice. The hotel thinks we requested not to be disturbed. I've dined here before. They're very accommodating to high-paying guests. He checked his watch. It's 11 p.m. You have 1 hour to sign, Evan. After that, I make the call that destroys you. Evan sank back into his chair. He looked defeated, trapped. Every angle covered, every exit blocked. Nora's mind raced. They needed help, but how? Her phone was in her apron pocket, but the guards were watching. Even if she could text someone, who? The police? And say what? A billionaire was being forced to sign a contract? That wasn't illegal. Immoral, yes, but not illegal. Unless the manufactured evidence Roland mentioned was fake. That was fraud. But proving it would take time they didn't have. Can I get anyone more wine? She asked, trying to sound normal. Stop stalling, Roland said. Sit down, over there, where I can see your hands. Nora sat in the corner chair, mind still racing. There had to be something, some way to buy time or get word to someone who could help. Evan was staring at the contract like it was a death sentence. Maybe it was. Everything he'd built, everything his father had built, about to be signed away to a man who'd spent years plotting this exact moment. You know what the worst part is? Evan said suddenly. My wife would have seen through you immediately. She always said you had dead eyes, that you smiled but never meant it. Your wife was too good for you, Roland replied. Everyone knew it. Yeah, she was. Evan's voice was soft. She was also the only person who could talk me down when I was about to make a catastrophic mistake. She'd tell me to stop thinking like a businessman and start thinking like a father. How touching. Sign the contract. What would she want for Lily? Evan continued, almost to himself. Security? Money? Or a father who didn't fold the first time someone threatened him? This isn't folding, it's surviving. Is it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like I'm teaching my daughter that bullies win, that threats work, that you should compromise your principles when things get hard. Roland's expression darkened. You have 55 minutes. Nora watched Evan carefully. Something had shifted in his demeanor. The defeat was gone, replaced by something harder, clearer. Tell me something, Roland, Evan said. What's your end game? Let's say I sign. You take Hart Industries. Then what? You strip it for parts, sell off divisions, fire everyone my father trained? I run it properly, without sentiment getting in the way. You destroy it, because that's what you do. You're not a builder, you're a vulture. Evan stood again, and this time there was steel in his spine. My father didn't promise you a stake because he knew you'd ruin everything he created. He left you out because you deserved to be left out. Sit down, No. Evan's voice was calm, certain. I'm not signing, not tonight, not ever. Do your worst. Make your calls. Freeze the trust fund. Manufacture your evidence. I'll fight you in court for the next decade if I have to. You'll lose everything. Maybe, but at least I'll lose it fighting instead of handing it over like a coward. He looked at Nora. I'm sorry I dragged you into this. You were right earlier. Cruelty doesn't make you strong. It just makes you cruel. And I'm done being cruel. Nora felt something catch in her throat. This was probably suicidal. Roland wasn't bluffing about destroying him, but watching Evan choose the hard right over the easy wrong made her want to cheer and cry at the same time. Roland's calm finally broke. You arrogant bastard. You think you can just walk away? Watch me. The door's locked. Then unlock it, or I start screaming for help, and you explain to hotel security why you're holding a guest against his will. Nobody will believe you. Try me. Evan pulled out his phone. I'm calling the police, reporting kidnapping and extortion. Let's see how that plays out on tomorrow's news cycle. Roland moved fast. He lunged across the table, grabbed for Evan's phone. Evan jerked back, but Roland caught his wrist, twisted. The phone clattered to the floor. Restrain him! Roland barked at his guards. They moved forward. Evan threw a punch that connected with the first guard's jaw, a solid hit that sent the man stumbling. But the second guard was bigger, trained. He got Evan in a chokehold within seconds. Stop! Nora jumped up. Let him go! Stay out of this, Roland snarled. He picked up Evan's phone, pocketed it. You're going to sign, Hart, even if I have to break every finger until you do. Evan was still struggling, but the guard had him locked tight. His face was turning red from lack of air. Nora did the only thing she could think of. She grabbed the wine bottle and swung it at the nearest guard. It shattered against his shoulder. He roared, released Evan, turned on her with murder in his eyes. You little... Evan tackled him from behind. They went down hard, crashing into the table. Glasses shattered, paper scattered. The other guard grabbed Evan, tried to haul him off. It was chaos. Violent, messy chaos. And Nora was right in the middle of it with absolutely no idea what to do. She ran for the door, tried the lock. It was a deadbolt, key only from the inside. No key in sight. She pounded on the wood. Help! Someone help us! But the dining room was soundproofed. Nobody was coming. Behind her, Evan was losing. Both guards had him now, holding him while Roland approached with something in his hand. A pen. Sign, or I'll make sure you can't hold a pen ever again, Roland said. Blood was running from Evan's nose. His lip was split, but he smiled. Actually, smiled, blood on his teeth. Go to hell. Roland grabbed Evan's hand, forced it flat against the table, raised the pen like a weapon. Nora moved without thinking. She grabbed the nearest heavy object, a brass candlestick from the side table, and swung it at Roland's head. It connected with a sickening crack. Roland dropped, unconscious before he hit the floor. Everyone froze. Oh no, Nora whispered. Oh no, oh no, oh no. I didn't mean to. Is he dead? Did I kill him? One of the guards released Evan, dropped to check Roland's pulse. He's breathing, but we need to get him to a hospital. The guard pulled out his phone. Called someone. started giving rapid-fire instructions about medical emergencies and discreet cleanup. The other guards still had Evan pinned. "Don't move." "Let him go," Nora said, still holding the candlestick. "Or I'll hit you too." She had no idea if she actually would. Hitting Roland had been pure panic instinct. Her hands were shaking so hard the candlestick wobbled, but something in her expression must have been convincing because the guard released Evan and stepped back. Evan stumbled to his feet, breathing hard. "We need to leave. Now. The door's locked." "Then we find another way out." He grabbed her hand. "Come on." There was a service entrance in the back corner, hidden behind a decorative screen. Evan had seen the staff using it earlier. He dragged Nora toward it while the guards were distracted with Roland. The service entrance led to a narrow hallway. They ran, Nora's shoes slapping against tile, Evan's breath coming in pained gasps. Behind them, shouting, the guards had noticed their escape. "This way," Nora gasped, pulling him toward a stairwell. Service stairs. They connect to the basement. They plunged down the stairs, taking them two at a time. Nora's ankle twisted on the third-floor landing. Pain shot up her leg, but she kept moving. Evan was bleeding from his nose and mouth, leaving drops on the concrete steps. They reached the basement level. Nora shoved open the door and they stumbled into a maze of storage rooms and mechanical equipment. The thrum of generators filled the air, loud enough to cover their footsteps. "Where are we going?" Evan asked, wiping blood from his face. "I don't know. I've never been down here." "Great, just great." They moved deeper into the basement, looking for another exit. Behind them, the stairwell door banged open. The guards were following. "There," Evan pointed, "loading dock. That has to lead outside." They ran toward it. The loading dock door was locked too, but this one had a crash bar. Evan slammed into it. The door flew open and they burst out into the alley behind the hotel. Cold night air hit them. The alley was narrow, lined with dumpsters, lit by a single flickering bulb. Nora's ankle screamed with every step, but she forced herself to keep moving. "We need to call the police," she panted. "With what phone? Roland took mine, and yours is in my apron pocket." Nora fumbled for it with shaking hands. "I'll call 911. "No, not yet." Evan grabbed her wrist. "If we call the police now, it becomes he said, she said. Roland's lawyers will twist everything, make us look like the criminals." "You're bleeding. He was going to break your fingers. That's assault. That we can't prove. It's our word against his, and he has two guards who'll back up whatever story he tells." Evan's face was grim in the dim light. "We need evidence. Solid evidence of what he was planning. The contracts are still in that room, along with his phone, which probably has the proof we need." Nora stared at him. "You want to go back?" "I want to end this. Tonight. Before he has time to regroup and come at me with lawyers and manufactured evidence." Evan wiped blood from his mouth. "But I can't ask you to..." "Stop." Nora took a breath, trying to think through the adrenaline and fear. "If we go back, they'll be waiting. We'd be walking into a trap. Probably. And if we don't, Roland wakes up, spins this as an attack, and destroys you anyway." "Definitely. So we're screwed either way. Welcome to my world." Evan's smile was bitter. "Look, I can create a distraction, draw them away from the dining room. You slip in, grab the contracts, and Roland's phone, get out. Then we have leverage." "That's a terrible plan. You have a better one?" Nora didn't, and the longer they stood in this alley, the more time Roland's people had to prepare. She thought about Marcus and Sophie and Daniel, fired for minor mistakes. Thought about Evan's little girl, who deserved a father brave enough to fight for her future. "Okay," she said, "but we do it together. I'm not letting you create a distraction that gets you killed." "Nora, together, or I'm calling 911 right now, and we take our chances with the police." Evan studied her for a long moment, then he nodded. "Together. But if things go bad, you run. Promise me." "Same goes for you." "I'm serious, So am I." Nora met his eyes. "Your daughter needs you alive more than she needs you victorious. Remember that." Something in Evan's expression softened. When did a shy waitress get so brave? "When a billionaire reminded me that fear is easier to face on a full stomach." She pulled out her phone. "Now let's figure out how to not die in the next 20 minutes. They stood in that alley for exactly 90 seconds before Nora's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I know where you are. Come back, or I make the call that ends you. RP. He's awake, Evan said grimly, reading over her shoulder. That didn't take long. How did he get my number? Hotel records, probably, or he had someone pull it from your staff file. Evan's jaw tightened. We need to move. If he knows we're out here, he's already got people coming. Nora's ankle throbbed, but she pushed off the dumpster she'd been leaning against. The parking garage. There's a staff entrance 2 buildings down. We can cut through there, come back in from a different direction. They started moving, Nora limping, Evan steadying her when she stumbled. The alley opened onto a side street. Empty at this hour, thank whatever forces governed late-night luck. They crossed quickly, ducked into the parking garage entrance. Inside, fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Cars sat in neat rows, silent and dark. Their footsteps echoed against concrete. What floor? Evan asked. 3. The sky bridge connects to the hotel's business center. They found the stairs, started climbing. Nora's phone buzzed again. Tick-tock. You have 10 minutes before I call my lawyers. After that, your mother's medical bills become very public, along with your work visa issues. RP. Nora's blood went cold. How does he know about my mother? Evan glanced at the message. He doesn't. He's guessing, throwing darts to see what sticks. My mother's in hospice care, stage 4 lung cancer. The bills are... She couldn't finish the sentence. He's bluffing about making them public. That's not leverage. That's just cruelty. What about the visa thing? Evan looked at her sharply. Are you here illegally? No. I have a work visa. But it expires in 3 months and my renewal application is still pending. And if there's any scrutiny, any reason for immigration to look closer, her voice shook, I get deported. My mother dies alone. Everything I've worked for disappears. He can't do that. He doesn't have that kind of power. Doesn't he? You said he has board members in his pocket. Who else does he have? Immigration officials? Journalists looking for a story about hotels employing undocumented workers? Evan stopped on the landing between floors 2 and 3. Nora, look at me. She did. His face was a mess, blood drying on his lip, bruise already forming around his left eye. But his expression was steady. He's doing this to scare you, Evan said, to make you panic and run. Don't give him that satisfaction. I'm already panicking. I know, me too. He took a breath. But we're not running. We're going back in there, getting the evidence we need, and ending this together, right? Nora wanted to say yes. Wanted to be brave like she'd been in the library when she threw that paperweight. But now the adrenaline was fading and reality was setting in. She was a waitress with an expiring visa and a dying mother, going up against a billionaire who played dirty and had the resources to destroy her completely. Why are you doing this? She asked. You could just sign the contract. Save yourself the fight. Roland gets what he wants. You keep some control. Your daughter's trust fund stays intact. And what kind of man does that make me? A pragmatic one. A coward, Evan corrected. Look, I've spent 2 years since my wife died making compromises. Telling myself I was being smart, being strategic, but really I was just scared. Scared of losing more than I'd already lost. He gestured to his battered face. This is the first time in 2 years I've actually fought for something instead of calculating the angles. You're going to lose. Maybe. Probably. He smiled, winced at how it pulled his split lip. But at least I'll go down swinging, and maybe Lily will remember that her father stood up when it mattered. Nora's phone buzzed a 3rd time. She didn't look at it. Okay, she said. Let's go get your evidence. The sky bridge was deserted, all glass and steel connecting the parking garage to the hotel's business center. Through the windows, Nora could see the city lights spreading out below. Up here, everything looked clean and ordered. Down there, lives were messy and complicated and falling apart. They crossed quickly. The business center door was locked, but Nora had a staff key card. It beeped green and they slipped inside. The business center was dark except for the exit signs. Computers sat dormant on desks. The printer where Nora had copied Evan's contracts earlier was quiet now, waiting for tomorrow's demands. The dining room is 2 floors down, Nora whispered. We can take the service elevator, but if his guards are watching the corridors, then we find another route. Evan moved to the windows overlooking the main atrium. There, the maintenance catwalk. It runs above the 2nd floor, connects to the ventilation access near the kitchen. You want to crawl through the ventilation system? You have a better idea? Nora didn't, and they were running out of time. Roland's deadline was probably already passed, which meant he was making calls, activating whatever nightmare contingencies he'd planned. They found the maintenance access panel behind a supply closet. Evan jimmied it open with a letter opener from someone's desk. The catwalk beyond was narrow, metal grating suspended over the atrium below. Looking down made Nora dizzy. "Don't look down," Evan said, like he'd read her mind. Too late. They edged out onto the catwalk. The metal creaked under their weight. Far below, the lobby was quiet, but not empty. Night staff moved between stations, cleaning, preparing for tomorrow. If anyone looked up, they'd see two figures creeping across the catwalk like amateur burglars. Nobody looked up. Halfway across, Evan's phone started ringing. Except it wasn't his phone, because Roland had taken it. The ringing was coming from below, from the private dining room area. "That's mine," Evan said. "He's calling me with my own phone." "Let it ring. He'll know we're close." "He already knows." They kept moving. The catwalk ended at a ventilation access panel. Evan worked it open, revealing a crawl space that led toward the kitchen area. The space was tight, barely wide enough for shoulders. "You first," Evan said. "I'll cover our tracks." Nora squeezed into the crawl space, ignoring the way it pressed against her ribs and made breathing difficult. Behind her, she heard Evan replacing the panel, then his own labored breathing as he followed. The crawl space smelled like dust and old metal. Nora's hands found purchase on rivets and seams, pulling herself forward. Her ankle screamed with every movement, but she gritted her teeth and kept going. After what felt like an hour, but was probably 3 minutes, she reached another panel. This one had gaps, allowing her to see into the room below. The kitchen. Empty now, all the stations clean and dark. She pushed the panel. It resisted, then gave way with a soft clunk. She lowered herself through the opening, dropped the last few feet onto the prep counter below. Evan followed, landing with less grace and a muffled grunt of pain. "You okay?" Nora whispered. "Ribs are probably cracked, but I've had worse." He moved to the kitchen door, peered through the window. "Coast looks clear. The dining room is just down the hall." They moved silently through the kitchen, past the walk-in coolers and dishwashing station. The hallway beyond was lit, but empty. Their footsteps were too loud on the tile, each sound making Nora flinch. The private dining room door was closed. No light showed underneath. Evan tested the handle. Locked, but not with the deadbolt this time. Just the regular lock. He pulled a credit card from his wallet, worked it into the gap. "Where did you learn that?" Nora asked. "Misspent youth." The lock clicked. "Stay behind me." He pushed open the door. The room was empty. No guards, no Roland, just the aftermath of their earlier fight. Broken glass glittered on the floor. The table was askew, chairs overturned. Blood stained the carpet where Roland had fallen. But the contracts were gone. So was Roland's phone. "Damn it," Evan breathed. "He took everything." Nora moved into the room, looking for anything they might have missed. But Roland's people had been thorough. Even the wine bottle she'd smashed was gone, probably to eliminate evidence of the assault. "This was a waste," Evan said. "We risked everything for nothing. Wait." Nora knelt by the overturned table. "When the guards grabbed you, papers scattered everywhere. Maybe something fell underneath." She looked, found shards of glass, a dropped pen, a napkin stained with wine. And there, wedged against the table leg, a single sheet of paper. She pulled it out carefully. It was a page from the contract, but not one of the official merger documents. This was something else, an addendum, printed on different paper stock. "Evan, look at this." He took the page, scanned it quickly. His expression darkened. "This is an amendment to the merger terms. It transfers ownership of Hart Industries completely to Pierce Holdings upon signing. Not a merger, a full acquisition." "Would your lawyers have caught that?" "Not if it wasn't included in the version they reviewed." He flipped the page over. "This is dated today. He was going to slip it into the final documents right before I signed." "So you would have signed away everything thinking it was a merger, but legally it would have been a complete surrender." "Exactly." Evan folded the page, tucked it into his jacket. "This is fraud. Actual prosecutable fraud. If we can prove he intended to use this..." The door behind them opened. Nora spun. One of Roland's guards stood in the doorway, looking surprised to see them. His hand went to his jacket, reaching for something. Evan moved fast. He grabbed a chair and swung it. The guard blocked with his arm, but the impact sent him stumbling backward into the hallway. Evan didn't wait. He charged through the door after him. "Run!" he shouted back at Nora. But running meant leaving Evan to fight alone, and Nora had already decided she was done running. She grabbed the brass candlestick she'd used on Roland earlier, still sitting on the side table where she'd dropped it. Then she followed Evan into the hallway. The guard had Evan against the wall, one forearm pressed against his throat. Evan's face was turning red, his hand scrabbling for purchase. Nora didn't think, just swung the candlestick at the guard's kidney. He grunted, released Evan, turned on her with fury in his eyes. She swung again, but he caught the candlestick mid-swing, twisted it from her grip. Then his hand was around her throat, lifting her onto her toes. "You're done," he growled. Evan tackled him from the side. They went down in a tangle of limbs. The candlestick clattered across the floor. Nora gasped for air, her throat burning where the guard had grabbed her. More footsteps. The second guard was coming, drawn by the noise. "Nora, go!" Evan was on top of the first guard now, trading punches. Blood flew from someone's nose, she couldn't tell whose. The second guard rounded the corner, saw her, started forward. Nora ran. She didn't know where she was going, just away. Her ankle buckled with every step, sending jolts of pain up her leg. Behind her, shouting. The guard was following. She turned a corner, then another. Found herself in the hotel's main corridor, the one that connected to the lobby. Guest rooms on either side, all closed doors and silence. The guard was gaining on her. She could hear his footsteps, heavy and fast. A door ahead opened. An elderly man in a bathrobe stepped out, probably heading to the ice machine. "Help!" Nora gasped. "Please, he's chasing me!" The guest looked alarmed, stepped back into his room. The door closed. Lock clicked. So much for help. The guard grabbed her shoulder, spun her around. She tried to fight, throwing wild punches that bounced off his chest. He caught her wrists easily. "Enough," he said. "Mr. Pierce wants to talk to you." "I don't want to talk to him." "Not your choice." He started dragging her back the way they'd come. Nora struggled, but he was twice her size and trained for this. She might as well have been fighting a brick wall. They reached the hallway where she'd left Evan. He was still there, on the ground now, the other guard's knee in his back. Blood streaked the floor. Evan's blood, probably. "Got her," Nora's guard announced. "Good. Boss wants them in the basement." "The basement?" Nora's stomach dropped. "Why the basement?" The guard didn't answer, just hauled her toward the service elevator, the other guard dragging Evan along behind. The elevator descended. Nora's mind raced, looking for options. But they were trapped in a metal box with two men who'd been trained to hurt people. Fighting would be suicide. Screaming would do nothing. The elevator was soundproofed. They reached the basement. The doors opened onto that same maze of storage and mechanical equipment where Nora and Evan had fled earlier. But this time, the lights were on. And standing near the water heater, looking remarkably composed for someone who'd been unconscious 20 minutes ago, was Roland Pierce. A bandage covered the wound on his head where Nora had hit him. But his eyes were clear and cold. "Thank you for returning," he said pleasantly. "We have unfinished business." The guard shoved Nora and Evan forward. They stumbled, caught themselves against a storage rack. "You can't do this," Evan said. His voice was hoarse, either from the choking or the blood running down his throat from his nose. "We have the addendum, the fraudulent amendment you were going to slip into the contract. That's evidence." Roland smiled. "You mean this?" He held up the folded paper that had been in Evan's jacket. "Your friend here took it while you were fighting, sloppy, leaving evidence in your pocket." Evan's hand went to his jacket. Empty. "Don't feel bad," Roland continued. "You were outmatched from the start. I've been planning this for 3 years. You really thought you could outmaneuver me in one night?" "What are you going to do?" Nora asked. "Kill us? You can't make 2 people disappear from a hotel." "Kill you? Don't be dramatic." Roland tucked the amendment into his own pocket. "I'm going to give you both a choice. Evan signs the merger contract right now, with no amendments or complications. In exchange, I drop all the manufactured evidence against him. His daughter's trust fund stays intact. And you, Ms. Vale, keep your job and your visa." "And if we refuse?" Evan asked. "Then I make one phone call." The SEC freezes all Hart Industries assets pending investigation into embezzlement. Your lawyers get tied up in court for months, maybe years. By the time they prove the evidence was fake, there's nothing left to save. Your daughter grows up with nothing but the memory of her father's failure. He turned to Nora. And you get deported. Your mother dies alone. Simple as that. Nora felt sick. He had them. Every angle covered, every escape route blocked. This was what real power looked like. Not the flashy displays of wealth, but the quiet certainty that you controlled all the variables. How do we know you'll keep your word? Evan asked. You don't, but it's the only option you have. Roland pulled out a tablet, brought up a document. I had my lawyers prepare a clean version. No hidden amendments. Just a straightforward acquisition with favorable terms for your exit. Sign it, and this nightmare ends. Evan looked at the tablet like it was a poisonous snake. You win either way. Yes, but this way you get to walk away with something. Isn't that better than nothing? Silence fell over the basement. The generators hummed. Water dripped somewhere. Nora could hear her own heartbeat, too fast, too loud. Evan's shoulders slumped. He looked defeated in a way that went beyond physical, like something inside him had finally broken. If I sign, he said quietly, you leave Nora alone. No retaliation, no threats, nothing. She walks away clean. Of course. And my daughter's trust fund is untouchable. Whatever happens to the company, she's protected. Already stipulated in the contract. Evan reached for the tablet. His hand shook slightly. Nora watched him, and something inside her snapped. Not anger exactly. More like clarity. She'd been scared this whole time, making decisions based on fear. Afraid of losing her job, her visa, her mother's care. But standing here, watching Evan surrender everything because Roland had found the right pressure points, she realized something. Some things were worth losing everything for. Don't sign it, she said. Evan looked at her. Nora. Don't. He's not going to drop the fake evidence. He's going to use the signed contract to take your company, then bury you with the fraud charges anyway. That's what people like him do. Roland's expression didn't change. That's quite an accusation. It's quite an obvious play. Nora stepped forward, ignoring the way the guards tensed. You've been planning this for 3 years. You think you're going to let Evan just walk away after tonight? After he fought back, made you look weak in front of your people? I'm a businessman, not a monster. You're both. She turned to Evan. Don't give him what he wants. Make him work for it. Make him pay for every inch. He'll destroy us, Evan said. He's going to destroy you anyway. At least this way you go down fighting. Roland's pleasant mask cracked. You stupid girl. You have no idea what you're risking. I know exactly what I'm risking. Everything I have, which isn't much, but it's mine. Nora felt something like calm settle over her. My grandmother used to say that fear is a liar. It tells you that you're small and weak and powerless. But you're only powerless if you believe it. Your grandmother is dead, Roland said flatly, and her folk wisdom won't save you from deportation. Maybe not, but at least I'll know I didn't surrender without a fight. Evan was staring at her like he'd never seen her before. Then, slowly, he lowered the tablet without signing. She's right, he said. You're going to screw me over either way. Might as well make you earn it. Roland's face went hard. You're making a mistake. Probably my 10th one tonight. Evan straightened, and despite the blood and bruises, there was something unbowed in his posture. But it's my mistake to make. Fine, Roland nodded to his guards. Lock them in the mechanical room. I'll deal with them after I've made my calls. The guards grabbed them again. Nora didn't fight this time, just let herself be dragged toward a heavy metal door at the far end of the basement. The mechanical room, where the hotel's main systems lived. Boilers and water heaters and electrical panels. They were shoved inside. The door slammed behind them, lock clicking into place. The room was hot, filled with the rumble of machinery. A single bulb cast harsh shadows across pipes and valves. Evan sank onto the floor back against the wall. That was either very brave or very stupid. Both, Nora said. She tested the door. Locked solid. No emergency release on the inside. Can you call someone? Do you have another phone? Roland took everything. Wallet, keys, phone. I have nothing. Nora pulled out her own phone. No signal this deep in the basement. Of course. So, we're trapped, she said. Looks like it. And Roland's making calls right now. Destroying everything. Probably. Nora slid down the wall until she was sitting next to him. Her ankle throbbed. Her throat hurt where the guard had choked her. She'd never been this tired in her entire life. I'm sorry, she said. I should have just kept my mouth shut, served the food, minded my business. You'd have signed the contract and this would all be over. And I'd have lost everything anyway, Evan said. At least this way. I know I tried. He looked at her. Thank you for not letting me give up. You're welcome. Though we're probably both going to regret it. Probably. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Evan started laughing, a low, rough sound that turned into a cough. What's funny? Nora asked. This morning, my biggest problem was getting to Lily's recital on time. Now I'm locked in a basement, bleeding from multiple orifices, about to lose my company and possibly my freedom. He shook his head. My wife would be simultaneously proud and furious. She sounds like she was something. She was everything. His voice softened. She'd like you, I think. She always said the bravest people were the ones who had the most to lose. Nora's throat tightened. My grandmother would probably lecture me for getting involved. She always said my problem was caring too much about other people's problems. Sounds like she cared too much about your problems. Yeah, she did. Nora closed her eyes. I miss her every single day. The generators hummed. Water rushed through pipes above their heads. Time passed, though Nora wasn't sure how much. Could have been 5 minutes, could have been 30. Then she heard something. A sound beneath the machinery noise. Running water, but different, faster. She stood, followed the sound. In the corner, behind the boiler, water was pooling on the floor. Not a lot, but it was spreading. Evan, look at this. He came over, knelt beside the puddle. Pipe leak. Probably from all the building stress. These old systems are temperamental. Can we use it? Break the pipe more, flood the room, make them open the door? Maybe, but that would take time, and if we flood it too much, we could short out the electrical system for the whole hotel. Which would trigger emergency protocols, Nora said, thinking fast. Fire alarms, evacuation procedures. They'd have to open all the emergency exits. They'd also call the fire department. This becomes very public very quickly. Good. Let Roland try to spin this with firefighters and news cameras watching. Nora looked around for something to pry with. We need to make this leak bigger. They found a toolbox mounted on the wall. Inside, a wrench that fit the pipe connections. Evan worked it onto the joint where the water was leaking. This is going to make a mess, he warned. I'm okay with mess. Turn it. He turned the wrench. The connection loosened and water began spraying out with more force. It hit the hot pipes, instantly turning to steam. The room temperature spiked. More, Nora said. Evan turned harder. The connection gave way completely. Water exploded out, flooding across the floor in seconds. Okay, that's definitely more, Evan said, jumping back. The water spread fast, running under the boiler, pooling around electrical panels. Sparks started flying from one of the junction boxes. Then another. We should probably get away from the electronics, Nora said. They backed toward the door as the water kept rising. It was ankle deep now, mixing with steam and heat to create a fog that made breathing difficult. An alarm began wailing, the fire system, triggered by the electrical shorts. That's our cue, Evan said. Outside the door, they could hear shouting, running footsteps. The lock clicked and the door flew open. A hotel maintenance worker stood there, looking panicked. What happened? The whole system is shorting out. Evan and Nora pushed past him into the hallway. Water was following them out of the mechanical room, spreading across the basement floor. More alarms joined the chorus. The sprinkler system activated, raining down on everything. We need to evacuate, the maintenance worker was saying into his radio. Basement flooding, electrical hazards, possible fire. They ran for the stairs. Behind them, more staff were arriving, trying to assess the damage. Nobody tried to stop them. Everyone was too focused on the crisis. They reached the ground floor. The lobby was chaos. Guests in bathrobes and pajamas streaming toward exits, staff trying to maintain order while evacuation alarms screamed. Fire trucks were already pulling up outside, lights flashing. In the confusion, Nora spotted Roland near the front desk. He was on his phone, looking furious, barking orders at his guards. They were searching the crowd, looking for something, looking for Evan and Nora. "This way," Nora pulled Evan toward the side exit. They slipped out into the night air, joining the crowd of evacuated guests on the sidewalk. Firefighters were everywhere now. Police cars arriving, news vans pulling up, drawn by the spectacle. "We need to disappear," Evan said, "before Roland's people spot us." But there was nowhere to go. They were surrounded by emergency responders, guests, hotel staff, exposed in the flashing lights and chaos. Then Nora felt a hand on her shoulder. She spun, ready to fight. It was Castellan, her manager. His face was pale, exhausted. "I should fire you," he said. "You flooded the basement." "It was an accident," Nora said automatically. "Like hell it was." He looked at Evan. "Mr. Hart, your assistant has been calling. Something about an emergency board vote tomorrow. She says it's critical you respond." Evan's expression sharpened. "My assistant? What did she say exactly?" "That Roland Pierce has been spreading rumors about you missing tonight's deadline. The board is considering moving the vote up to 6 a.m. instead of 9. Castellan held out his own phone. "She said to call her immediately if I saw you." Evan took the phone, moved away to make the call. Nora watched him, hope flickering despite everything. Castellan looked at her. "You're either the bravest person I've ever met or the stupidest. Possibly both." "Definitely both," Nora agreed. "For what it's worth, I saw Roland Pierce's guards dragging you and Mr. Hart toward the basement earlier. I was going to call security, but then all hell broke loose." His expression was unreadable. "Whatever you two did down there, it might have just saved the hotel from being associated with something very ugly." "What do you mean?" "I mean, I've worked here 15 years. I know what Roland Pierce is. And I know he doesn't conduct legitimate business in hotel basements at midnight." Castellan straightened his tie, a gesture of composure amid the chaos. "If anyone asks, I'll say you were helping with the evacuation. Understood?" Nora nodded, throat tight. "Thank you. Don't thank me, just don't flood anything else." He turned and disappeared back into the crowd. Evan returned holding the phone. His expression was different now, focused, determined. "My assistant got the board to delay the vote until 10 a.m., he said. "That gives me time to organize a response. But I need to get home, get cleaned up, prepare my defense." "What about Roland?" "He's still got the fake evidence. Still got board members in his pocket. But now the fight's public." Evan gestured to the news cameras. "He wanted to keep this quiet, handle it behind closed doors. Now it's messy and visible, and that changes the game." A paramedic approached, concerned about the blood on Evan's face. He waved them off, said he'd get checked at his own hospital. "You should go," Nora told him. "You've only got a few hours to prepare." "What about you?" "I'll figure it out. I always do." Evan studied her for a long moment. Then he pulled out Castellan's phone, typed something, handed it back to her. "That's my assistant's number. Call her tomorrow after the board vote. Whatever happens, I'm going to make sure you're taken care of." "You don't have to." "I know, but I want to." He smiled, winced at the pain. "You saved my life tonight. Multiple times. That's not something I forget." A black car pulled up. One of the hotel's executive vehicles. Evan's assistant must have sent it. He started toward it, then paused. "Nora? That proverb your grandmother told you, about courage being action despite fear. What about it? I think she'd be proud of you tonight." Then he was gone, the car pulling away into the night. Nora stood on the sidewalk, watching the taillights disappear. Around her, the chaos continued. Fire crews worked, police took statements, guests complained. Her phone buzzed with messages from other staff, asking if she was okay, what happened, was she fired. She didn't answer any of them, just stood there, feeling the weight of everything that had happened settle onto her shoulders. Her mother was dying. Her visa was expiring. Her job was probably gone. And she'd just made an enemy of one of the most powerful men in the city. But she'd also stood up when it mattered, fought when she could have hidden, chosen courage over safety. Her grandmother would have called her an idiot. But yeah, maybe she'd have been proud too. The paramedics insisted on checking Nora despite her protests. She sat on the back of an ambulance while a young EMT shined a light in her eyes and asked her questions about dizziness and nausea. Behind them, the Velvet Crown was still being evacuated, water damage crews already arriving to assess the basement flooding. "You're going to have a nice bruise on that ankle," the EMT said, wrapping it with an elastic bandage. Ice it when you get home. Stay off it for a few days if you can. Stay off it. Like she had that luxury. Like she could just take time off work when her job was probably already gone and her bills were still coming due. Thanks, Nora said, accepting the bandage. The EMT handed her an ice pack. Seriously, rest it. Otherwise you're looking at permanent damage. Nora nodded, but they both knew she wouldn't listen. She limped away from the ambulance, ice pack pressed against her ankle, and pulled out her phone. 3 a.m. The night felt like it had lasted a week. She had 7 missed calls from her mother's hospice facility. Her stomach dropped. She called back immediately. The night nurse answered on the second ring. Ms. Vale, we've been trying to reach you. Your mother had an episode around midnight. Her oxygen levels dropped significantly. Nora's world tilted. Is she? She's stable now. But Dr. Morrison wants to discuss adjusting her care plan. Can you come in tomorrow? Yes. Of course. I'll be there first thing. Ms. Vale? She's been asking for you. She seems agitated. Guilt twisted in Nora's chest. While she'd been fighting billionaires and flooding basements, her mother had been struggling to breathe, calling for her. Tell her I'll be there in the morning. Tell her I love her. She ended the call, stood there on the sidewalk feeling like the worst daughter in the world. Her mother was dying, and Nora had spent the night playing hero in someone else's crisis. Nora. She turned. Castellan stood there, looking older than she'd ever seen him. The chaos behind him was settling slightly, fire crews packing up, guests being allowed back to their rooms. The police want to take statements, he said, about what happened in the basement. What did you tell them? That there was a pipe malfunction during a private event. Accidental flooding that triggered the alarm systems. He met her eyes. They're buying it for now, but Roland Pierce is claiming you and Mr. Hart deliberately sabotaged hotel property. That's insane. Is it? You did flood the basement. To escape from being held against our will. Castellan sighed. I know, and I believe you, but Roland's lawyers are already spinning a narrative about corporate espionage and property damage. They're pushing for criminal charges. Nora's legs felt weak. Criminal charges? Against both you and Hart. They're claiming you conspired to sabotage the merger negotiations through illegal means. He pulled out a business card, handed it to her. This is a lawyer, a good one. She does pro bono work for hotel staff. Call her before you talk to the police. Nora took the card with shaking hands. Why are you helping me? Because in 15 years I've seen Roland Pierce destroy a lot of people. Good people who got in his way. Castellan's expression was hard. I've never had the guts to stand up to him, but you did. So the least I can do is make sure you have a fighting chance. He walked away before Nora could respond. She looked at the lawyer's card. Amanda Chen, attorney at law, specializing in employment and immigration cases. The universe had a sick sense of timing. A police officer approached, young and professional looking. Ms. Vale, I need to ask you some questions about tonight's incident. Nora gripped the business card. I'd like to speak with my lawyer first. The officer's expression didn't change. That's your right, but we're going to need a formal statement within 24 hours. I understand. He handed her his own card. Call the station when you're ready. And Ms. Vale, don't leave town. She wanted to laugh at that. Leave town to go where? Everything she had was here, her dying mother, her precarious job, her expiring visa. She was trapped in this city as surely as she'd been trapped in that basement. The officer left. Nora stood alone on the sidewalk, exhaustion crashing over her in waves. She needed to go home. Needed to sleep. But her apartment was a 40-minute bus ride away, and the buses weren't running at 3 in the morning. She started walking, ice pack still pressed against her ankle. The city was quiet at this hour, just scattered cars and the occasional drunk stumbling home from bars. Nora's footsteps echoed against empty storefronts. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You made a mistake tonight. Fix it or face the consequences. You have until noon tomorrow. R.P. Roland. Of course. He wasn't done with her. Another text followed immediately. Your mother's hospice care costs $8,000 a month. It would be a shame if they suddenly couldn't accept her insurance anymore. Nora stopped walking. Read the message again, hands shaking with fury. He was threatening her mother, actually threatening a dying woman's medical care. She typed back before she could stop herself. Touch my mother, and I go to every news outlet in the city with what I know about your fraud. The response came in seconds. What fraud? You have no proof. Just the word of a desperate waitress with visa problems. Good luck with that. He was right. The addendum was gone. Roland had taken it. Without that physical evidence, it was just her story against his lawyers. Another text, noon tomorrow. Recant your statement to the police. Say it was all a misunderstanding. Do that, and I forget you exist. Nora wanted to throw her phone into the street, wanted to scream. But she just kept walking, jaw clenched so tight her teeth hurt. She reached her apartment building as the sun was starting to rise. 4 floors up, no elevator, every step agony on her wrapped ankle. She fumbled with her keys, finally got the door open, and collapsed onto her couch. The apartment was tiny. Studio efficiency, barely 400 square feet. But it was hers, paid for with waitress wages, and split shifts and tips from people who barely noticed she existed. On the kitchen counter, bills were stacked in neat piles. Rent, utilities, her mother's medical expenses that insurance didn't cover. The numbers never added up right. She was always short, always scrambling, always one crisis away from losing everything. And now she'd antagonized a billionaire who could destroy her with a phone call. Her phone buzzed again. She almost didn't look, expecting another threat from Roland, but it was from Evan's assistant's number. Mr. Hart asked me to check on you. Are you safe? Do you need anything? Richard Chen, executive assistant to Evan Hart. Nora stared at the message. The assistant had the same last name as the lawyer Castellan had recommended. Coincidence? Or had Evan's people already been making calls? She typed back. I'm home. Safe. Thank you for asking. The response was immediate. Mr. Hart wants you to know that legal representation has been arranged. Amanda Chen will contact you in the morning. All fees covered. Don't speak to police or Roland's people without her present. So not a coincidence. Evan was already protecting her. Another message followed. Also, Mr. Hart asked me to tell you, don't let fear make you a liar. Whatever Roland's threatening, we'll handle it together. Nora felt something crack in her chest. She'd known this man for less than 24 hours, and he was already fighting her battles like they mattered to him personally. She set down her phone, stripped off her ruined uniform, and stood under a hot shower until her skin turned red. The water stung the bruises forming on her arms, the scrapes on her knees from crawling through ventilation shafts. Evidence of the night written across her body. When she finally climbed into bed, it was past 5 a.m. She had to be at the hospice by 8 to see her mother. Had to call the lawyer before the police came looking for her statement. Had to figure out how to survive the next 24 hours without completely falling apart. Sleep wouldn't come. She lay there staring at the ceiling, replaying everything. The fight in the basement, the flooding, Evan's refusal to sign, Roland's threats, her mother's breathing crisis. At 7 a.m., she gave up on sleep. Made coffee, drank it black because she was out of milk. Checked her bank account and felt sick at the balance. Called the lawyer's number Castellan had given her. Amanda Chen answered on the 3rd ring, sounding alert despite the early hour. Ms. Vale, I've been expecting your call. Richard Chen contacted me last night, filled me in on the situation. Are you related? Nora asked. He's my brother. Small world. Amanda's voice was crisp, professional. I've already reviewed the preliminary police report. Roland Pierce is claiming property damage and interference with business negotiations. They're weak charges, but he's got the resources to make them stick if we're not careful. What do I do? First, don't talk to anyone about what happened. Not the police, not hotel management, not Roland's people. Everything goes through me. Papers rustled in the background. Second, I need you to write down everything that happened last night. Every detail, every conversation, every threat. Time-stamped, if you can remember. Roland took the evidence, the fraudulent contract amendment. Then we build a different case. Unlawful imprisonment, assault, coercion. I'm assuming you have bruises? Nora looked at her arms, her throat where the guard had choked her. Yes. Good. Document them. Photos with timestamps. Those are evidence too. Amanda paused. Ms. Vale, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. Roland Pierce is dangerous. He's got money, connections, and a reputation for destroying people who cross him. But he's also arrogant, and arrogant people make mistakes. What kind of mistakes? The kind where they threaten people over text message. Amanda's voice held a hint of satisfaction. Richard mentioned Roland's been sending you threats. I'm going to need screenshots of every message. Nora hadn't even thought of that. I have them. He threatened my mother's medical care. Perfect. That's extortion. Criminal extortion. More rustling. Send me everything. I'll have a legal strategy prepared by noon. Roland's deadline is noon. He wants me to recant my statement. Then we'll make sure you have something more compelling to say instead. Amanda's tone was steel wrapped in silk. Ms. Vale, do you trust Evan Hart? I don't know him well enough to trust him. Fair answer, but do you believe he's telling the truth about Roland's fraud? Nora thought about the addendum she'd found, the secret phone call she'd overheard, the way Roland's whole demeanor had shifted when confronted. Yes, I believe him. Then we're on the right side of this fight. It might get ugly, but we're right. Hold on to that. They talked for another 20 minutes, Amanda outlining strategy, asking pointed questions about witnesses and timelines. By the time Nora hung up, she felt marginally less terrified. Not safe, but less alone. She dressed carefully, choosing clothes that covered most of her bruises, but left her throat visible. Amanda had said documentation mattered. She took photos in the bathroom mirror, the finger-shaped bruises on her throat stark against her skin, sent them to Amanda along with screenshots of Roland's threatening texts. Then she caught the bus to the hospice facility. Her mother looked smaller than Nora remembered. The oxygen cannula made her face seem sunken, fragile, but her eyes were alert when Nora entered the room. There you are, her mother said, voice raspy. I was starting to think you'd forgotten about me. Never, Mama. Nora sat in the chair beside the bed, took her mother's hand. The skin was paper-thin, bones prominent. I'm sorry I couldn't come last night. The nurses said you had an emergency at work. Her mother studied Nora's face. You look like you've been in a fight. Something like that. Did you win? Nora laughed, though it hurt her bruised ribs. I don't know yet. Ask me in 24 hours. Her mother squeezed her hand weakly. You're too much like your grandmother, always fighting other people's battles. This one's mine too, Mama. Is it worth it? Nora thought about Evan's daughter, who deserved a father willing to fight for her. Thought about all the other people Roland had destroyed over the years. Thought about the kind of person she wanted to be. Yeah, she said. I think it is. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Nora told her mother about the stew Evan had ordered, about speaking Hungarian for the first time in years, about small kindnesses in the middle of chaos. She didn't mention the violence, the threats, the fear. Her mother drifted off to sleep around 9:30. Nora stayed until 10, watching the steady rise and fall of her chest, memorizing the moment. These visits felt more precious each time, more weighted with impending loss. Dr. Morrison caught her in the hallway as she was leaving. Ms. Vale, we need to discuss your mother's care plan. Nora's stomach tightened. What's wrong? She's declining faster than we anticipated. The next few weeks are going to be difficult. The doctor's expression was kind but firm. We should also discuss hospice costs. Your mother's insurance covers most expenses, but there are gaps. Have you considered supplemental coverage? I'm working on it, Nora lied. The truth was, she'd been robbing Peter to pay Paul for months, skipping her own doctor's appointments, eating one meal a day, wearing shoes with holes in them, and still the bills kept coming. There are financial assistance programs, Dr. Morrison said gently. I can have our social worker. I'll handle it. Nora's pride was stupid. She knew it was stupid, but she couldn't help it. Thank you for taking such good care of her. She left before the doctor could press further. Outside, the morning was bright and cold. Nora checked her phone. 11 a.m. 1 hour until Roland's deadline. Amanda had texted. Got preliminary injunction against Roland contacting you directly. Any further threats go straight to the DA's office. Also, Evan's board meeting starts in 2 hours. He wants you there if you're willing. Nora stared at the message. The board meeting where Evan's entire future would be decided. Why would he want her there? She called Amanda. Why does he want me at the meeting? Nora asked without preamble. You're a witness to Roland's fraud attempt. Your testimony could sway board members who are on the fence. Roland will destroy me. He's going to try anyway. At least this way you're on record, protected. Nora closed her eyes. Where's the meeting? Hart Industries headquarters? Downtown. 10th floor conference room. Meeting starts at 1 p.m. Amanda paused. Ms. Vale, you don't have to do this. You've already done more than anyone could ask. If I don't show up, does Evan lose? Probably. Roland's got 3 board members locked down. Evan needs to swing at least 2 of the remaining 5. Your testimony about Roland's threats and the fraudulent amendment could be the difference. The amendment Roland destroyed. The one you can describe in detail under oath, along with everything else you witnessed. Amanda's voice was steady. I won't lie to you. This will be brutal. Roland's lawyers will attack your credibility, your immigration status, everything. But it's also your chance to fight back on the record. Nora thought about her mother's question. Is it worth it? I'll be there, she said. She went home, changed into the only professional outfit she owned, a navy dress she'd bought at a thrift store for job interviews, paired with shoes that pinched her toes but looked acceptable. She couldn't do anything about the bruises on her throat, so she left them visible. Amanda had said documentation mattered. The bus ride downtown took 30 minutes. Nora spent it going over everything in her mind, preparing for questions, trying not to panic. Hart Industries headquarters was a glass tower in the financial district. Nora felt completely out of place walking through the marble lobby, past executives in $1,000 suits. She gave her name to the receptionist who made a call, then directed her to the 10th floor. Amanda Chen was waiting by the elevators. She was younger than Nora expected, maybe 35 with sharp eyes and a sharper suit. Ms. Vale, thank you for coming. Amanda shook her hand firmly. I need to brief you before we go in. The board meeting is technically private, but Evans invoked his right to call character witnesses regarding the merger. That's you. What do I say? The truth. What you saw, what you heard, what Roland threatened. Amanda handed her a folder. This is a timeline I've prepared based on your statement. Review it quickly. We go in at 1. Nora scanned the document. It was all there, laid out in clinical detail. The overheard phone call, the fraudulent amendment, the basement imprisonment, the threats against her mother. Roland's lawyers will try to discredit you, Amanda continued. They'll bring up your visa situation, your financial problems, anything to suggest you're lying for money or favors. Don't get defensive. Just stick to the facts. I'm terrified. Good. That means you're smart. Amanda's expression softened slightly. But you're also braver than you think. You went toe-to-toe with Roland Pierce and lived to tell about it. A room full of businessmen should be easy by comparison. It wasn't easy. The conference room was enormous, all dark wood and floor-to-ceiling windows. 12 people sat around a table that could have seated 20. Evan was at the head, looking exhausted but composed. His face was cleaned up, bruises concealed with what was probably professional makeup, but Nora could still see the split in his lip. Roland sat opposite him, flanked by 2 lawyers in matching gray suits. He looked completely unbothered by the night's events, like being knocked unconscious and having his plans exposed was just a minor inconvenience. The board members were a mix of ages and genders, all wearing expressions of varying skepticism. They'd clearly been arguing before Nora arrived. Evan stood when she entered. Thank you for coming, Ms. Vale. Roland's lawyers immediately objected. This is highly irregular. Ms. Vale has no standing in these proceedings. She's a material witness to the events of last night, Amanda countered. Events that directly pertain to the merger under discussion. One of the board members, a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair, spoke up. I'd like to hear what she has to say. We've been listening to accusations and counter-accusations for an hour. Maybe a neutral party can shed some light. She's not neutral, Roland said smoothly. She's Mr. Hart's employee, obviously coached. I'm not his employee, Nora interrupted. I work for the Velvet Crown Hotel. We've met exactly twice, yesterday and last night. The gray-haired woman gestured to an empty chair. Please sit. Tell us what happened. So Nora did. She walked them through everything, starting with Evan's initial arrival at the hotel, the firing of the waiters, their conversation over Hungarian stew. Then the dinner meeting with Roland, the overheard phone call about taking Hart Industries either way, the discovery of the fraudulent amendment. She described being held in the basement, Roland's threats, the choice between signing and destruction, the flooding, the escape, the text messages threatening her mother's medical care. The room was completely silent when she finished. One of the board members, a younger man with a tablet in front of him, spoke carefully. These are serious allegations. Do you have any proof? The fraudulent amendment is gone. Roland took it, Nora said. But I have screenshots of his threatening text messages. She pulled out her phone, handed it to Amanda, who projected the messages onto the room's large screen. Your mother's hospice care costs $8,000 a month. It would be a shame if they suddenly couldn't accept her insurance anymore. The words hung in the air, stark and damning. Roland leaned back in his chair. Those messages were sent by someone using a spoofed number. Anyone could have sent them claiming to be me. The number matches your personal cell, Amanda said, which we verified through previous business correspondence with Mr. Hart. Then my phone was cloned, identity theft. Roland spread his hands. Ms. Vale's story is compelling, but it's just that. A story. Designed to derail legitimate business negotiations because Mr. Hart is desperate to avoid accountability for his company's failures. The company's failures that you helped engineer? Evan said quietly. By buying up stock through shell companies, bribing board members, spreading false information to investors? Prove it. I intend to. Evan opened his laptop, turned it so the board could see the screen. I spent this morning going through 3 years of trading records. Shell companies purchasing Hart Industries stock, all traced back to subsidiaries of Pierce Holdings. That's illegal stock manipulation. Roland's pleasant expression finally cracked. Those are legitimate investments. Made under false pretenses with insider information. Evan clicked through several documents. Information you obtained by bribing my CFO, who incidentally resigned this morning and is cooperating with the SEC investigation I launched at 6 a.m. The room erupted. Board members talking over each other, Roland's lawyers demanding to see the evidence, Amanda calmly taking notes. The gray-haired woman banged her hand on the table. Enough! Everyone quiet. Silence fell. Roland, she said, is any of this true? Margaret, you've known me for 20 years. Is it true? Roland's jaw tightened. Business is complicated. Sometimes you have to make strategic moves that look questionable to outsiders. Yes or no, did you attempt to manipulate Hart Industries stock and bribe company officers? The silence stretched. Then Roland smiled, and it was the coldest thing Nora had ever seen. I did what was necessary to correct an injustice. Hart's father promised me a stake in this company, a real partnership. Instead, he left me scraps and gave everything to his son, who's run it into the ground through incompetence and sentiment. He stood. I don't apologize for taking what should have been mine from the beginning. That's a confession, Amanda said. On the record, in front of 12 witnesses. Roland's lawyers looked like they wanted to disappear. One of them grabbed Roland's arm. Don't say another word. Why not? It's done. Roland looked at Evan. You won this round. Congratulations. But I've been playing this game longer than you've been alive. This isn't over. Yes, it is. The gray-haired woman, Margaret, stood. As chairman of this board, I'm calling for an immediate vote. All in favor of rejecting Pierce Holdings' merger proposal and referring Roland Pierce to the SEC for investigation into stock manipulation and corporate fraud. Raise your hand. 9 hands went up. Only 2 remained down. The board members Roland had bought. The motion passes. Margaret looked at Roland. Security will escort you out. You're banned from Hart Industries property pending the results of the investigation. You're making a mistake, Margaret. I've made many. This isn't one of them. Security arrived within minutes. Roland left flanked by his lawyers, and Nora noticed he was texting furiously as he walked, probably calling in favors, preparing his counterattack. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. But for now, they'd won. The board members filed out, some congratulating Evan, others looking shell-shocked. When the room finally cleared, only Evan, Nora, and Amanda remained. Evan sank into his chair, exhaustion written across his face. Thank you both. I couldn't have done this without you. Don't thank us yet, Amanda said. Roland's going to come back hard. He's got resources and connections. The SEC investigation will take months, maybe years. But he's exposed now. That's what matters. Evan looked at Nora. Are you okay? She laughed, high and slightly hysterical. I just helped take down a billionaire. My mother's dying. My job is probably gone. I might get deported. But sure, I'm great. Your job isn't gone. Evan pulled out his phone, typed something. I just texted the Velvet Crown's ownership group. They're replacing Castellan with someone less spineless, giving raises to the entire waitstaff, and offering you the position of assistant manager if you want it. Nora stared at him. You can't just... I own 40% of the hotel's parent company. I can do exactly that. He smiled. And before you argue, this isn't charity. You're smart, brave, and you see things other people miss. Those are exactly the qualities I need in my organization. I'm a waitress. You were a waitress. Now you're someone who helped prevent a corporate takeover through quick thinking and courage. That's worth more than any business degree. Nora felt tears building. My visa, this. Amanda's already working on it, Evan said. We'll get you proper sponsorship through the hotel. Legal, documented, no shortcuts. And my mother's medical bills? Covered. All of them. Going forward, she gets the best possible care. He held up a hand when Nora tried to protest. This isn't charity. It's payment for services rendered. You saved my company, my daughter's future. That's worth more than I can ever repay. The tears spilled over. Nora wiped them away angrily. This is too much. It's not enough. Evan's voice was soft. Nora, you could have walked away last night. Should have walked away. But you didn't. You stood beside someone you barely knew and fought like his future mattered to you. Why? She thought about her grandmother's proverb, about Marcus and Sophie and Daniel losing their jobs, about Lily, who deserved better than a father who'd given up. Because it was the right thing to do, she said finally. And I'm tired of watching the wrong thing win. Evan smiled, genuine this time. Then help me keep doing the right thing. Work with me, not for me, with me. Help me rebuild this company into something my daughter can be proud of. I don't know anything about running a corporation. Neither did I when I inherited it. We'll figure it out together. He stood, extended his hand. What do you say? Nora looked at his hand, then at Amanda, who was smiling slightly. This is insane, Nora said. Completely, Amanda agreed. But that doesn't make it wrong. Nora thought about going back to the Velvet Crown, serving water and smiling at people who didn't see her. Thought about her mother, who had a few weeks or months left, who deserved to spend them without her daughter drowning in debt. Thought about the girl she'd been before her grandmother died, before fear had taught her to be small and invisible and safe. She took Evan's hand. Okay, but I want it in writing, and I want to tell Castellan myself that I'm leaving. Deal, Evan shook firmly. Welcome to Hard Industries, Nora Vale. Outside the conference room windows, the city spread out below them. Somewhere down there, Roland Pierce was regrouping, planning his revenge. Somewhere, Nora's mother was sleeping in a hospice bed, dreaming of better days. Somewhere, a little girl named Lily was finishing her school day, unaware that her future had just been secured by a waitress who'd decided courage mattered more than safety. Nora's phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. She tensed, expecting another threat. But it was from Marcus, the waiter Evan had fired on that first day. Just got rehired with back pay and a raise. Heard you had something to do with it. Thank you. Then Sophie. My kids are eating dinner tonight because of you. I don't know what you did, but thank you. Then Daniel. Castellan got demoted. New management is actually decent. Word is you're some kind of hero. True? Nora showed the messages to Evan. He smiled. See? You're already making a difference. I just wanted to help. That's what makes you dangerous, Amanda said. People who just want to help usually end up changing everything. Nora looked at the messages again, at the gratitude from people who'd been casualties in someone else's war. People like her, just trying to survive. Maybe she could do this. Maybe courage wasn't some grand gesture, but just showing up, speaking up, refusing to let fear turn you into someone who looked away. Her grandmother would have called her an idiot for taking this job, for making enemies of powerful people, for risking everything on principle. But yeah, she'd definitely be proud. 2 weeks passed like a fever dream. Nora spent the first 3 days at her mother's bedside, watching the hospice staff adjust medications and oxygen levels, holding a hand that grew lighter each day. The bills that had haunted her for months disappeared, handled by some efficient assistant at Hard Industries who sent a single email confirming payment in full. No fanfare, no strings, just done. Her mother cried when Nora told her she wouldn't have to worry anymore. "You sold your soul to a rich man," her mother said, but she was smiling through the tears. "I sold my time and labor for fair compensation," Nora corrected. "There's a difference." "Is there? Or are you just better at lying to yourself than I was?" It was a fair question. Nora still didn't have a good answer. Amanda Chen worked miracles with the visa situation. The hotel's parent company sponsored a work visa that actually had legal standing, filed paperwork that would have taken Nora months to navigate alone, made the whole immigration nightmare vanish like it had never existed. When Nora tried to thank her, Amanda just shrugged. "Thank my brother. Evan's paying my fees, and Richard's the one who called me at midnight demanding I take your case." She paused. "Also, you're interesting. Most of my clients are corporate executives fighting over stock options. You actually did something brave." "I did something stupid." "Same thing, usually." Amanda handed her a folder. "Your new employment contract. Read it carefully before you sign. I added clauses protecting you from retaliation and guaranteeing severance if Hart Industries gets sold or restructured." "You think that'll happen?" "Roland Pierce doesn't strike me as someone who gives up. So yes, I think there's going to be more fighting. This was just round one." She was right. Roland's lawyers filed a countersuit 3 days after the board meeting, claiming defamation and conspiracy to defraud. The SEC investigation moved forward, but slowly, bureaucracy grinding at its usual glacial pace. Meanwhile, Roland went on the offensive in the press, giving carefully worded interviews about corporate espionage and disgruntled employees making false accusations. He never mentioned Nora by name, but the implication was clear. She was a gold digger, a liar, someone who'd fabricated a story to extort money from a desperate billionaire. The first time Nora saw herself referenced in a business article as an unidentified hotel employee with questionable immigration status, she threw up in the Hart Industries executive bathroom. Evan found her there, sitting on the floor with her head between her knees. "I can make them retract it," he said quietly. "My lawyers can—" "Don't." Nora wiped her mouth with the back of her hand. "It'll just make it worse. Make me look like I need protecting." "You do need protecting. From him." "No, I need to learn how to protect myself." She stood, rinsed her mouth at the sink. "Your world has different rules than mine. I'm still figuring them out." Evan leaned against the doorframe, looking older than his 32 years. "For what it's worth, I hate those rules too. The posturing, the spin, the way everything becomes a weapon." "Then why play the game?" "Because if I don't, people like Roland win, and I have a daughter who deserves better than a world run by people like him." Nora dried her hands on a paper towel. "How is Lily? Did you make it to her recital?" "I did." "She played the piano, messed up twice, kept going anyway." His smile was genuine for the first time in days. "Reminded me of someone." "I've never played piano in my life." "That's not what I meant." The job itself was overwhelming. Evan had given Nora an office, an assistant, a title that sounded impressive but felt hollow. Director of Operations and Community Relations. What that actually meant, she was still figuring out. Mostly it involved meetings. Endless meetings with people who spoke in acronyms and jargon, who'd spent decades in corporate environments and seemed to view Nora as either a curiosity or a threat. She didn't have an MBA, didn't understand quarterly projections or market positioning or any of the 1,000 things everyone else seemed to take for granted. But she understood people, and she was learning that in Evan's world, that was rarer than business degrees. The first real test came during a meeting about layoffs. Hart Industries was bleeding money from the expansion failures Roland had mentioned. The CFO who'd resigned, the one who'd been feeding Roland information, had apparently been cooking the books to hide just how bad things were. The interim CFO, a nervous man named Patterson, presented his analysis to the executive team. Nora sat in the back, still not sure why she'd been included. "We need to cut 15% of the workforce," Patterson said, pulling up spreadsheets. "Across all divisions. It's the only way to stop the bleeding." The other executives nodded, already pulling out calculators to determine which departments could afford the deepest cuts. Nora stood up. "Can I ask a question?" Patterson looked annoyed. "Ms. Vale, this is a financial discussion. I'm not sure you have the background to— How many of those 15% have been with the company more than 10 years? I don't see how that's relevant." "Humor me." Patterson sighed, pulled up another spreadsheet. approximately 40%. So we're firing people who've given a decade of their lives to this company because someone else mismanaged the money. Nora walked to the front of the room. What message does that send? It sends the message that we're serious about fiscal responsibility, one of the other executives said. A woman named Victoria, head of marketing. Sentiment doesn't pay the bills. Neither does destroying employee morale. Nora looked at Evan. Can I see the actual numbers? Where the money's going? Evan nodded to Patterson, who reluctantly shared the financial reports. Nora had no formal training in reading balance sheets, but she'd spent 3 years managing her mother's medical bills on a waitress salary. She knew how to find waste. Why are we spending $2 million a year on executive retreats? She asked, pointing to a line item. Team building, Victoria said. It's essential for It's a vacation. Call it what it is. Nora scrolled further. And this? Company cars for executives. Another $1 million. Office renovations that happened 6 months ago. Conference sponsorships for events nobody attends. Those are standard business expenses, Patterson protested. They're waste. Cut them before you cut people. Nora met his eyes. You want to save money? Start with the top, not the bottom. The room went silent. Victoria spoke carefully. Ms. Vale, you're new here. You don't understand how corporate culture works. I understand that you're proposing to fire 400 people so you can keep your company car and your annual trip to Aspen. Nora's voice was steady, but her hands were shaking under the table. That's not corporate culture. That's just cruel. Evan, Patterson said, turning to the boss, surely you're not going to let her I'm going to let her finish, Evan said quietly. Nora, what's your alternative? Cut executive perks first. All of them. If we're asking the workforce to sacrifice, leadership sacrifices too. Company cars gone, retreats canceled, office renovations postponed. That alone saves $3 million annually. She pulled up the spreadsheet, started highlighting. Then we renegotiate vendor contracts. We're paying premium prices for services we could get cheaper elsewhere. Another $2 million, sublease the unused office space on floors 6 and 8. That's revenue, not just savings. She walked them through 10 more cuts, none of them touching the workforce. By the time she finished, she'd found enough savings to avoid the layoffs entirely and still improve the company's financial position. Patterson looked like he'd swallowed a lemon. Victoria was staring at her laptop, clearly recalculating her own job security. That's impressive, Evan said. Can you have a full proposal on my desk by tomorrow? Yes. Then we'll table the layoff discussion until I've reviewed it. He stood, meeting adjourned. Thank you, Nora. The other executives filed out in silence. Nora gathered her notes with trembling hands. Evan waited until they were alone. You just made enemies of half my leadership team. I know. Good. They needed shaking up. He smiled. My father used to say the problem with executives is they forget what it's like to actually need the money they're managing. You haven't forgotten. I can't afford to forget. My mother's medical bills were more than Victoria's car allowance. I know. That's why I hired you. He picked up his laptop. Keep doing what you just did. Question everything. Push back. Make them uncomfortable. Even if they hate me? Especially then. Comfortable people don't change, and this company needs to change. The proposal took Nora all night to write. She wasn't good at corporate language, couldn't make it sound polished and professional like the executives could. But she laid out the numbers, showed her work, explained why preserving jobs mattered more than preserving perks. Evan implemented it within a week, cut his own salary first by 30%, then asked the other executives to follow suit. Some did. Some resigned instead, which Evan accepted without argument. Victoria stayed but stopped speaking to Nora in the hallways. The 400 employees who would have been laid off never knew how close they'd come to losing everything. But word got around anyway, the way it always does in companies. People started looking at Nora differently, not with the suspicion she'd expected, but with something like hope. She hated that. Hope was dangerous. Hope meant expectations she couldn't meet. The second week brought another crisis. Roland's lawyers filed for an injunction to freeze Hart Industries' assets pending the outcome of his defamation suit. It was a long shot legally, but it would tie up resources and create uncertainty that could tank the stock price. Nora was in a meeting with the legal team when Amanda called. I need you at the courthouse in an hour, Amanda said without preamble. Roland's lawyers are requesting emergency hearing. You need to testify again. I thought we already did that. This is different. They're claiming new evidence that contradicts your testimony. Evidence that proves you and Evan conspired to frame Roland. Nora's stomach dropped. What evidence? They won't say until the hearing, but whatever it is, they're confident enough to risk perjury charges if they're lying. The courthouse was downtown, all marble and metal detectors and lawyers in expensive suits. Nora felt like a fraud walking through those halls, still wearing the same navy dress she'd bought at a thrift store, still limping slightly on her wrapped ankle. Roland was already there, flanked by his legal team. He looked at Nora with something like pity, which was somehow worse than hatred. The hearing was in a small courtroom, just the judge and lawyers and witnesses. Evan sat in the gallery, jaw tight. Roland's lead attorney, a shark in an Armani suit, started the proceedings. Your Honor, we have evidence that Ms. Vale's testimony regarding the fraudulent contract amendment was fabricated. Evidence that proves the amendment never existed and that she and Mr. Hart conspired to create it after the fact to justify their assault on Mr. Pierce. Amanda shot to her feet. That's absurd. Ms. Vale described the amendment in detail before destroying it, the shark interrupted. How convenient. But what Ms. Vale didn't know is that every document Mr. Pierce's team prepared that night was digitally tracked. Metadata, version control, timestamps. And none of that data shows any amendment being created or printed. He pulled out a tablet, showed the judge. This is the complete record of all documents prepared for that meeting. No fraudulent amendment, no secret clauses. Just the standard merger agreement that Ms. Vale and Mr. Hart have misrepresented. Nora's heart was pounding. That's not true. I held the amendment in my hands. You held a piece of paper that you claim was an amendment, but you have no proof it was ever part of our official documentation. For all we know, you printed it yourself to support your false narrative. The judge looked skeptical. Ms. Chen, do you have any evidence to counter this? Amanda was scrambling through her files. The physical document was destroyed, but Ms. Vale's description was detailed and specific. Description isn't evidence, the shark said smoothly. It's hearsay, and without the actual document, there's no way to verify her claims. Nora felt the room tilting. They were going to win. Roland's lawyers had found the one gap in their story and driven a truck through it. Then Evan stood up in the gallery. Your Honor, I have evidence. The judge frowned. Mr. Hart, you're not testifying. I have the document, the fraudulent amendment. He pulled out his phone, held it up. Ms. Vale sent me a photo of it before Roland's guards destroyed the physical copy. The courtroom went still. Amanda looked stunned. You never mentioned, because I forgot about it until just now. Evan approached the bench, showed his phone to the judge. Metadata shows it was sent from Ms. Vale's number at 11:47 p.m. on the night in question, 2 hours before the basement incident. The shark was already objecting. That photo could be doctored. Then have your forensics people examine it, Evan said. But I'm betting the metadata matches the timestamp Ms. Vale described, and the document content matches her testimony word for word. The judge took the phone, examined it carefully, pulled out reading glasses, zoomed in on the image. The silence stretched. This appears legitimate, the judge said finally. I'm ordering both parties to submit this evidence to a neutral forensic examiner. Hearing continued in 2 weeks pending results. Roland's shark tried to argue, but the judge was done. Gavelled the hearing closed, left the bench. In the hallway outside, Nora grabbed Evan's arm. You had that photo the whole time? I honestly forgot. You sent it right before everything went crazy in the basement, and then my phone got taken and... He ran a hand through his hair. I didn't think to look until the lawyer mentioned metadata timestamps. You forgot evidence that could have ended this weeks ago? I'm not perfect, Nora. I make mistakes. He looked exhausted. But we caught it in time. That's what matters. Amanda was already on her phone, probably calling forensic experts. Roland was across the hall, his lawyers huddled around him in urgent conversation. This isn't over, Nora said. No, Evan agreed, but we're still standing. That's more than Roland expected. The forensic results came back a week later. The photo was genuine, unaltered, with metadata that perfectly corroborated Nora's timeline. The document and the image matched her description exactly, including specific clause numbers and legal language that would have been impossible for her to fabricate. Roland's defamation suit fell apart. The judge dismissed it with prejudice, which Amanda explained meant he couldn't refile. The SEC investigation accelerated, subpoenas flying. Board members who'd taken Roland's bribes started cooperating to save their own skins. It should have felt like victory. Instead, Nora just felt tired. She spent her evenings at the hospice, watching her mother slip away by degrees. The good days became rarer, the lucid moments shorter, but the bills were paid, the care was excellent, and Nora could be there without worrying about missing shifts or losing income. Small mercies. On a Tuesday afternoon, 3 weeks after the board meeting that changed everything, Nora's mother passed away. Quietly, in her sleep, the way everyone hopes it happens, but rarely does. Nora was holding her hand when it happened. One breath, then another, then nothing. The grief was enormous and immediate and surprisingly gentle, like her mother had been preparing her for this moment for months, teaching her how to let go. Evan gave her 2 weeks off, paid leave, which was more than Nora had ever expected from any employer. She spent the time arranging the funeral, sorting through her mother's belongings, crying at random moments in grocery stores and on bus rides. The funeral was small. Nora, a few neighbors from her mother's old building, Dr. Morrison from the hospice. Evan showed up wearing a dark suit, standing in the back, just there if she needed him. She didn't speak to him during the service, but afterward, as people were leaving, he approached quietly. "I'm sorry for your loss." "Thank you." The words felt automatic. She'd said them so many times in the past week. "Take all the time you need. Your job will be there when you're ready." What if I'm never ready? Evan didn't have an answer for that. Just stood there in the cemetery, surrounded by graves, two people who'd both lost too much trying to figure out how to keep going. "My wife used to say that grief is love with nowhere to go," he said finally. "You don't stop loving them. You just learn to carry it differently." "Does it get easier?" "No, but you get stronger." Nora went back to work after 10 days instead of 14. Sitting alone in her apartment was worse than facing the corporate world. At least at work, there were problems she could solve, tasks that had clear solutions. Her first day back, there was a gift on her desk. A small package wrapped in simple paper. Inside was a cookbook, Hungarian recipes, handwritten in careful script. The title page read, "From Lily Hart, age 6. My dad said your grandma made you soup when you were sad. These are our family recipes. I hope they help." Nora cried at her desk for 10 minutes straight. When she finally pulled herself together, she found Evan in his office. "Your daughter made me a cookbook. She wanted to do something. I told her about your grandmother, about the stew. She insisted on hand-copying the recipes herself." He smiled. "Took her 3 days. Her handwriting's terrible." "It's perfect." Nora clutched the cookbook. "Thank you. Tell her thank you." "Tell her yourself. She wants to meet you. Keeps asking about the brave lady who helped her dad." "I'm not brave." "You keep saying that. But brave people never think they are. That's kind of the point." The SEC investigation concluded 2 months after everything started. Roland Pierce was charged with stock manipulation, fraud, bribery, and half a dozen other crimes Nora didn't fully understand. His lawyers negotiated a plea deal to avoid trial. He'd pay substantial fines, be banned from serving on corporate boards, and face 3 years of probation. No jail time. Because people like Roland didn't go to jail. Not really. They paid money and made promises and moved on to their next scheme. But his reputation was destroyed. The business press turned on him. Companies that had courted his investments now ran from association. He became a cautionary tale, proof that even the powerful could fall. Nora knew she should feel satisfaction. Instead, she just felt empty. Winning didn't bring her mother back, didn't erase the fear she'd felt in that basement, didn't change the fact that people like Roland still existed, still operated, still found new victims. She was sitting in her office, staring at financial reports without reading them, when Evan knocked. "Got a minute?" "For my boss?" "Always." He sat across from her, looking uncomfortable. "I have a proposition, and I want you to feel completely free to say no." "That's a terrible way to start a proposition." "I know." He took a breath. "The Velvet Crown's restaurant is failing, has been for years. Bad management, worse concept, bleeding money. The parent company wants to close it or sell it off." "Okay?" "I want to buy it, completely restructure it, and I want you to run it." Nora stared at him. "I'm not a restaurant manager." You were a waitress for 3 years. You understand service, you understand people, and you understand what makes a place feel welcoming versus hostile. He pulled out a folder. I'm thinking casual Hungarian cuisine, comfort food, reasonable prices, focus on quality and hospitality over pretension. The kind of place that serves stew to scared billionaires and makes them remember what matters. That's insane, probably, but I think it could work. And I think you're the right person to make it happen. Why me? Because you care. Not about profit margins or prestige, but about people, about making things better. He slid the folder across the desk. This is the business plan. Look it over. Think about it. If you hate the idea, we'll pretend I never brought it up. Nora opened the folder. Inside were architectural mock-ups, menu concepts, staffing proposals, all centered around creating something that felt like home instead of luxury. What about my job here? Keep it. Split your time, or transition entirely to the restaurant if that's what you want. Evan leaned forward. Nora, I'm not trying to trap you or obligate you. I'm offering you a chance to build something meaningful, but only if you want it. She looked at the mock-ups, saw herself in them somehow, saw her grandmother's kitchen, that tiny house where love had meant food and warmth and safety. Can I think about it? Take all the time you need. She thought about it for 3 days, called Amanda to review the contract terms, visited the restaurant space, which was currently closed and gathering dust, stood in the empty dining room and tried to imagine it filled with people, with life, with the kind of community her grandmother had built around a simple stove. On the 4th day, she called Evan. I'll do it, but I have conditions. Name them. We hire from the existing Velvet Crown staff first. The people who got screwed over by Castellan's management, they get first shot at positions. Done. And we pay fair wages. Not minimum, not even competitive. Actually fair. Enough that people can afford rent and groceries without needing second jobs. I wouldn't have it any other way. And I want the head chef to be someone who actually knows Hungarian cuisine, not some pretentious graduate of a fancy culinary school who thinks paprika is exotic. Evan smiled. I know someone. My grandmother's former apprentice. She runs a small restaurant in Budapest. I think she'd relocate for the right opportunity. Then yes, let's do this. They shook hands across his desk, sealing a deal that was probably going to be a disaster, but felt right anyway. The restaurant took 4 months to renovate and staff. Nora worked 18-hour days, learning on the fly, making 1,000 mistakes. But slowly, it came together. They called it Anya's, Hungarian for mother, a tribute to the women who taught them both that love often looked like a bowl of soup offered to someone who needed it. Marcus became head waiter. Sophie managed reservations. Daniel trained as sommelier, discovering a genuine talent for wine pairings. The former staff of the Velvet Crown's restaurant found new life at Anya's, treated with respect instead of contempt. Castellan, demoted and bitter, left the hotel entirely. Nora heard he'd taken a job at a chain restaurant in the suburbs. She felt no satisfaction in his fall, just relief that he couldn't hurt anyone else under his management. The head chef Evan recruited, a woman named Esther who was 60 and terrifying and brilliant, took over the kitchen like a general commanding troops. She taught Nora about flavor profiles and traditional techniques and the importance of cooking with love instead of just skill. Food is memory, Esther said one evening, stirring a pot of stew that smelled like Nora's childhood. You're not just feeding bodies, you're feeding souls, remember that. Nora did. Opening night was chaos. Reservations overbooked, kitchen running behind, a burst pipe in the bathroom that flooded the floor. Everything that could go wrong did. But the food was good. Better than good. And the people who ate it came back, brought friends, wrote reviews that weren't about luxury or prestige, but about feeling welcomed, feeling seen, feeling like they'd come home to a place they'd never been before. Evan brought Lily on the 2nd week. She was small and dark-haired and shy until Esther gave her a wooden spoon and let her stir the soup pot. My dad says you're brave, Lily told Nora, concentrating on her stirring. That you helped him when bad people were being mean. Your dad helped me too, Nora said. We helped each other. That's what friends do. Lily looked up with serious eyes. Are you friends now, you and my dad? Nora glanced at Evan, who was pretending not to listen from the next table. Yeah, she said. I think we are. Good. Dad needs more friends. He works too much. So do I, apparently. Then you can work too much together. That's better than working too much alone. It was 6-year-old logic, but it wasn't wrong. 6 months after opening, Anya's was profitable. Not wildly successful, not a destination restaurant that critics raved about. Just steady, sustainable, good. The kind of place people came when they wanted comfort instead of spectacle. Nora still worked at Hart Industries part-time, still sat in meetings where executives discussed market share and competitive advantages. But her heart was at the restaurant, in the kitchen, serving food to people who reminded her why any of this mattered. One evening, during the dinner rush, an older woman came in alone. She ordered the chicken paprikash and sat by the window watching the city lights. When Nora brought the food, the woman smiled. "This tastes like my mother's cooking. I haven't had paprikash this good in 40 years. "Would you like the recipe?" Nora asked. "I'd rather just come back." The woman's eyes were wet. Some things shouldn't be replicated. They should be experienced. After she left, Nora stood in the kitchen doorway, watching Esther work, watching the waitstaff move between tables, watching strangers become community over shared meals. Her grandmother would have loved this place, would have stood at that stove, tasting every pot, adjusting seasonings, telling stories to anyone who'd listen. Nora carried her loss differently now, the way Evan had said she would. Not lighter, but integrated. Part of who she was instead of something trying to destroy her. Roland Pierce never came to the restaurant, never contacted her again after the plea deal. She heard through corporate gossip that he'd moved to Europe, still wealthy, still connected, still dangerous, but diminished. She didn't forgive him, didn't think she ever would, but she stopped letting fear of him dictate her choices. Stopped looking over her shoulder, waiting for the next attack. Some battles you win by refusing to keep fighting them. On the 1-year anniversary of her mother's death, Nora closed the restaurant early, made a pot of her grandmother's stew, the recipe she'd perfected over months of trial and error, invited the staff to share it. They sat around the largest table, eating from mismatched bowls, telling stories about the people they'd lost and the people they'd become. Marcus talked about paying off his student loans, Sophie about her youngest daughter's scholarship, Daniel about finally calling his estranged father. Small victories, quiet ones. The kind that didn't make headlines but changed everything anyway. Evan showed up late, still wearing his suit from a board meeting. Lily was with him, dressed in purple because it was still her favorite color. "Sorry we're late," Evan said, "but board meeting ran long." "Did they yell at you?" Lily asked Nora seriously. "Not today. Today was actually okay." "Good. When people yell at my dad, he gets sad. I don't like when he's sad." "Me neither," Nora said. They ate together, this makeshift family that had formed from crisis and choice. Nora looked around the table at these people who'd become essential to her life in ways she never expected. A year ago, she'd been invisible, just a waitress serving water to people who didn't see her, drowning in fear and debt and impossible choices. Now she was here, running a restaurant that mattered, working a job that utilized her brain instead of just her ability to smile and carry plates, surrounded by people who knew her story and chose her company anyway. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. She still struggled with money sometimes, still woke up anxious about visa renewals and restaurant reviews, and whether she was good enough for this life she'd stumbled into. Still missed her mother with an ache that didn't fade. But she was different now. Braver, maybe. Or at least less willing to let fear make her small. Her grandmother used to say courage wasn't the absence of fear, but action despite it. Nora finally understood what that meant. Not grand gestures or dramatic stands, but showing up every day. Choosing kindness over safety. Building something good in a world that often rewarded cruelty. After dinner, Evan helped her clean up while everyone else filtered home. They worked in comfortable silence, washing dishes, wiping counters, the mundane tasks that bookended every extraordinary day. "I've been thinking," Evan said, drying a pot, "about expanding, opening a second Anya's location. One restaurant is enough chaos, for now. But in a year or two, when you're ready, I think this model could work in other cities. Same concept, same values. Places where people can feel seen. You just want an excuse to eat more paprikash." "That's definitely part of it," he smiled. "But also, I think you're onto something. This thing you've built. It matters in ways that Hart Industries never will." Hart Industries employs 3,000 people. Anya's feeds their souls. There's a difference. Nora hung up her apron, looked around the empty dining room. Do you ever regret it? Taking the hard road instead of just signing Roland's contract? Every day, Evan's honesty was jarring. I lost investors, board members, opportunities. The company's smaller than it was, less influential. My life would have been easier if I'd just surrendered. But Lily knows her father fought for something that mattered. She knows I chose difficulty over compromise. And when she's old enough to understand the whole story, she'll know that a waitress I barely knew had the courage to call me out when I was being a coward. He met her eyes. That's worth more than any business deal. They locked up together, stepped out into the cool night air. The city hummed around them, indifferent to their small dramas and victories. Thank you, Nora said, for seeing me when I was trying to be invisible. Thank you for not letting me stay cruel when it would have been easier. Evan checked his watch. I should get Lily home. School tomorrow. Tell her the soup was her best batch yet. She'll be impossible to live with. But he was smiling. Nora watched him walk to his car, watched him strap Lily into her booster seat, watched them drive away into the night. Then she started her own walk home, favoring her ankle that still ached when it rained. She thought about the girl she'd been a year ago, scared, small, convinced that survival meant staying quiet and hoping powerful people didn't notice you existed. That girl would have served Roland his water and kept her mouth shut, would have let Evan sign that contract and walked away without a word. That girl would have been safe and miserable and complicit in systems that crushed people like her for the convenience of people like them. Nora wasn't that girl anymore. Wasn't sure exactly who she'd become, but she was working on it. One day, one choice, one moment of courage at a time. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Her heart jumped, old fear flaring. But it wasn't Roland. Just a customer from tonight, someone who'd asked for her number to book a private event. Thank you for a wonderful meal. My grandmother would have loved your restaurant. It felt like coming home. Nora saved the message, added it to the collection she kept in a folder labeled, Why This Matters. On hard days when the fear came back or the doubt crept in, she'd read through them. Reminders that small acts of courage created ripples, that choosing to be kind in an unkind world wasn't weakness. She reached her apartment, climbed the 4 flights of stairs, unlocked the door to her tiny home. Inside, the cookbook Lily had made her sat on the kitchen counter, pages stained with use. Her grandmother's photo hung on the wall, a reminder of where she'd come from. Nora made tea, sat by the window, looked out at the city that had tried to break her and failed. Tomorrow she'd wake up and do it again. Serve food, manage staff, attend meetings, make 1,000 small choices that added up to a life worth living. It wouldn't be easy. Probably wouldn't ever be easy. But it would be hers, built on courage instead of fear, on community instead of isolation, on the belief that ordinary people could do extraordinary things when they decided that kindness mattered more than safety. Her grandmother had been right about fear being a liar. It had told Nora she was powerless, worthless, invisible. Turned out she was none of those things. She was just a woman who'd found her voice at the exact moment someone needed to hear it, who'd chosen action over paralysis, who'd learned that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply refuse to surrender to someone else's cruelty. The city lights glittered below. Somewhere out there, other people were fighting their own battles against their own fears, making choices between safety and courage, between silence and speaking up. Nora hoped they chose courage, hoped they found their own voices, their own moments of defiance, their own communities built on shared meals and shared struggle. Because that's how things changed. Not through grand gestures or dramatic confrontations, but through ordinary people deciding that enough was enough, that they deserved better, that the world deserved better. One bowl of soup at a time, one moment of bravery at a time, one person choosing to be seen instead of invisible. It wasn't a perfect ending, but it was real and honest and hers, and that was enough.